Everybody, we're going to call in order the Monday, March 26, 2018 Anderson Township Zoning Commission. Need an approval of the agenda. I understand there might be a change.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to, although I can't find my agenda, can I borrow yours for just a second? Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we switch items 3 and 4 in terms of their place on the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Goffin?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Reagan?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes. So what we've done is move 3 and 4, just flip them. Next item is the approval of the minutes from February 26. I understand we don't have the correct people here, so we will table that, Paul. Okay. Now on to item 4, which is now 3. The public hearing of case 1-2018, 7911 Stonegate Drive, filed by Marison Corp. Paul, you will give staff report.
Thank you. This is case 1-2018 Anderson. The applicant is the Marison Company, and they're representing Anderson Township Board of Trustees, who is the property owner. Location is at 7911 Stonegate Drive. This is just the address that was given. However, the zoning, the parcels in question are part of parcels 121, page 121, parcels 1, 5, 62, and 63. The current zoning there is B residence, and the request tonight is for a zone change from B single family to DD, which is planned multifamily. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 multifamily buildings with a total of 138 units, a mixture of 2-bedroom units and 1-bedroom units, accompanied with 230 parking spaces. We'll go through the slides here for a little bit so you can see a visual here. This is Nagel Road here and then Stonegate Drive. The applicants are proposing to have the main entrance come off of Stonegate Drive through their property to access the township property. Beachmont Avenue is to the south of the slide. This is the Township Operations Center. So this is the fire department, the Public Works Garage and Sheriff's Office, a Public Works barn, and then the Salt Dome. This building here is the Senior Center. Surrounding land uses, this is Salem Manor, and then the Stonegate apartment community. These larger buildings are multifamily homes, and then these are single-family homes along Stonegate Drive, and also that back up to Nagel. Other surrounding uses, this is a church. These are single-family homes. The surrounding zoning, well, this is the aerial. Currently, the land is vacant and is not being used by the township. It formerly, a while back, was used for athletic fields, but it has been vacant and not occupied for quite some time. This is the topography map of the site. It's relatively flat, although it has a slight decrease in grade, generally in the southwest direction. This is the surrounding zoning. The yellow is a single-family zoning. The property in question is B. To the south, this yellow area is C, which is single-family, minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. The red area is a mixture of retail or retail with a planned unit development overlay. This blue area here, this is the Sea of Smiles dental office, and then the blue here are some of the homes on Nagel have been converted to office use. And then the orange is the DD planned multifamily zoning district. So this is the site plan which is proposed. Again, the access drive coming off of Stonegate. This would be the main access into the development. The secondary access is proposed south of the property through the township property, which, and we have a separate map of that. We'll discuss that in a little bit. There are 2 buildings proposed. This building here, which is outlined, it's an irregular shape, I guess, is the best way to describe it. This building here also has 1 level of parking partially below grade. The maximum height of this building is proposed at 40 feet. This building here is also 3 stories. The proposed height of this building is 35 feet. This building also has covered parking along the edge of the parking lot, as well as a row of parking underneath the building, not below grade, but at the same grade as the building itself. Associated parking, the pool area and amenity area as well. This particular area is proposed to be a landscape buffer in an easement to remain as a buffer, and then the remaining is green open space area. This is the landscape plan. I know it's hard to see from the audience. The plan does meet the minimum parking landscaping requirements. There is a particular area on the north side of the parking lot adjacent to this multifamily building that does not meet the requirements and does not have a buffer to this, and that's mentioned in the staff report. Again, this area is meant to be an easement, a landscape easement, which is to remain undisturbed and to take advantage of the existing vegetation. And then there's proposed to have additional landscaping to buffer the single-family homes on Stonegate, as well as surrounding the church property and properties on Nagel. The detention area is proposed along this area here to tie into the existing detention for the Stonegate development. So it would be an elongated area, it runs north-south, that would also tie into the existing detention of the Stonegate area. A little bit closer view of the detention area. And then also on this slide, which it is hard to see from the audience, but the applicant's proposing traffic improvements on Nagel at Stonegate. They're proposing a right turn lane into Stonegate Drive if you're heading south on Nagel, and then if you're heading north on Nagel, a left turn lane into Stonegate Drive as well. This is the southern access that I was mentioning earlier. So the proposed development is up in this particular area of the slide. This is Selm Manor to get you oriented. Currently, there is a gated access to Selm Manor to allow for access from Selm Manor through the Township Senior Center and then out to Beachmont Avenue. The gate is only closed when the salt trucks are being loaded during the winter, but it's open other than that. And then there's currently a pedestrian connection from Selm Manor over to the Senior Center. So with this proposal, the changes are proposed to keep the access from Selm, but also create a new access to the apartments, and then create a separate driveway for both Selm and for the new development to come out to the drive that is shared, cross-access drive behind the Forest Hills Administration Building. So once you get to this point, you have the option of going through the shopping center over to the light at King Louis, or you have the option of going straight out to Beachmont Avenue between the Administration Building and the Township Fire Station. These are some of the renderings of the buildings. From different vantage points. And I'll let the applicant go into a little bit more detail of the renderings. These are the site photos. So this is standing in the parking lot at the Senior Center looking north toward the existing Stonegate apartments. This is looking toward where the detention area would be, toward the existing Stonegate buildings again. This is looking south toward the Township property. This is the church that's in the adjoining property, the Salt Dome, the Senior Center. This is standing on Nagel, looking back toward the site. The existing single-family homes on Stonegate Drive are just off of the map, or off of the picture in this area, just looking into this direction, looking toward the west. This is looking in the vicinity of where the proposed access drive off of Stonegate would be. Same area. So this is Stonegate Drive. The proposed access would be right in this vicinity. The clubhouse is currently over to the left of the slide. Again, just looking back at the site. These are the existing building that run east to west. The parking for the new building would be in this general area. And again, this picture was to demonstrate some of the existing vegetation that would be maintained in that landscape easement. So, just to backtrack a little bit, the site itself is 5.67 acres. This has been trimmed back from the original proposal in 2016. The proposal in 2016 had the development with the main access off of Nagel across from Pine Terrace. So that has been renegotiated with the township to remove that portion of the property from this application completely. So that is meant to be reserved for some type of future development, but the township has the intentions of conducting meetings and going through a different process for that particular piece of property. So that property is not under consideration with this zone change. It's only the 5.6 acres that you saw in the original staff report. This was heard at the Regional Planning Commission, which recommended approval. Regional Planning Commission recommended approval with 3 conditions. The one was that a landscaping plan be submitted that meets all of the zoning resolution criteria, that a lighting plan be submitted, and number 3, that the lot area provided per apartment shall not be less than the minimum standards of section 3.9D of the zoning resolution. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. The agency reports, again, a traffic impact study was submitted and approved by Hamilton County. That's in your packet. The county is recommending that these improvements be made, even though they are off-site with the turn lanes. They did recommend extension of those improvements to Pine Terrace. However, since this development now does not extend all the way to Nagel, the right-of-way won't necessarily be dedicated as part of the zone change, and it's under separate ownership. Part of it is under township ownership. There's also still one private property owner. So unless the private property owner was willing to donate right-of-way, there isn't enough right-of-way to extend those improvements to Pine Terrace. The township is willing to dedicate right-of-way, but there is still one private property owner that is in that particular area. Hamilton County Planning and Development, again, standard review comments, same with the Metropolitan Sewer District. There is access to public sewer, same with water. There were no comments this time from the Ohio Department of Transportation regarding the access through the township property out to Beachmont Avenue. Standard comments from Township Fire and Rescue. Same with Hillside Trust, there was no objections. So with, I apologize for going back so fast, but let's go back to the site plan. There, with a zone change, as well as Regional Planning Commission, the township looks at our adopted plans. The future land use plan for this property identifies it for institutional. That was done intentional with the 2016 update of the comprehensive plan because the property was still owned by the township. All government-owned properties in the township, all churches, all institutional uses were identified for that type of future land use because with our 2016 update, it was not feasible to study each of those properties individually and make future land use recommendations. So we felt that each case would be reviewed by its own merit through Regional Planning and the Zoning Commission when it came in. And as you can see from the text from Regional Planning's analysis of the institutional land use and changing it to multifamily and staff, we agree that this is an appropriate use, that it does provide a transition from the more intense uses on Beachmont Avenue to, there's a church in the vicinity, institutional use. There are also multifamily uses in the vicinity and single family. However, staff feels that this is an appropriate transition. So while it's not an institutional use, we feel that this land use is appropriate. The other elements of the comprehensive plan identified the need for higher density housing and alternative housing choices. This was stated in the 2016 update, and again, when this was before you in 2016, we were going through that update of our comprehensive plan. It wasn't quite adopted yet, so this is new since 2016. However, not really many changes for this particular property in our comprehensive plan. The zoning resolution, as far as compliance with the zoning resolution, there is the issue with density. The applicant was identifying 130 units, 68 two-bedroom units, and 62 one-bedroom units. They were short approximately, and there's a bonus formula for having parking included within a building or in a parking garage or enclosed. So they were short about 19,000 square feet of land area with a proposed unit count. There was an email that was sent to the Zoning Commission, I believe it was Friday or Monday, and there were new unit counts on that, which actually increased the density from what was presented during regional planning. And that makes them about 27,000 square feet, 27,500 square feet short on land area, part of the proposed unit mix. And I will let the applicant go through that and explain that to you. So that is one area that is not in compliance with the zoning resolution. The other area is the screening of parking, especially toward this other building in this particular area, is not in compliance. Again, a lighting plan and a landscaping plan was a condition, recommended condition from regional planning, and we agree that those would need to be identified. The last time this was before the Zoning Commission denied it on several reasons, and one of those was actually design of the buildings. The Zoning Commission felt that the proposal was more urban in nature and not necessarily consistent with the development pattern on Nagel as well as the existing Stonegate development. So the applicants have revised the design and the style of these buildings with a mansard roof and a style that they felt was more compatible with the existing development pattern. So I will let them also discuss that with you. Site planning, again, there is pedestrian connections. And as far as site planning, the other issue at the Zoning Commission was the intensity of the building and the proximity to the single-family homes as well as this existing building. The Zoning Commission felt that it was too intense and it didn't provide adequate separation from the height of these buildings to the single-family home. So in order to address that with the revised applications, the applicant has tried to push the buildings farther from the single-family homes, also change the orientation of the building. Before it was a U-shaped building. So now there's just one portion of that building that is close to the single-family homes, although it has been pushed back. Same way with this area, they have pushed the buildings further south to be closer to like uses, such as Stone Manor, such as the church, and these other buildings. But trying to give as much separation from the single-family homes as possible, and then also just proposing a landscaping easement to protect the viewshed from Nagel. So that was one item from the other. With that, I think we'll just go into staff's recommendation. We recommend approval of the zone change based off of the recommendation in the staff report. There were 3 items, conditions recommended by regional planning, which staff supports. Also, additional conditions recommended by staff is that the parking area on the north side be screened from the adjacent multifamily building. With the road improvements, there were 2 large oak trees on Nagel that staff is encouraging that those be protected. And then improvements shall be made to Nagel Road consistent with their traffic impact study and recommendations of the Hamilton County engineer. So I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have before turning it over to the applicant.
Okay, thanks, Paul. We'll start at the far left. Questions for staff?
Do you have those final unit counts after the revised proposal was submitted?
So the email it was on Monday, I'm sorry, yes, the revised counts were 78 two-bedroom and 52 one-bedroom. Still the same number of units, total units was 130.
Okay.
78 two-bedrooms and 52 one-bedroom.
That's it. Thank you.
What did the compliance go from to? It says 91% now?
What we calculated is based off of the old unit mix of 68 two-bedrooms and 62 one-bedrooms, they needed an additional 19,291 square feet of land area to be compliant. With the new unit mix, they are short 27,508 square feet.
So it didn't trend the right way, or?
It did not trend the
Okay.
right way, correct. And the option, and just on that, and again, I want the applicant to go through their unit mix and their findings, but, so the options of addressing that are obviously reduce the unit, the number of units, change the unit mix,
Or grow the land.
grow the land.
Okay. We'll
Yes.
we'll ask the applicant.
Okay.
Oh, hi.
Or, I'm sorry, and the third one is request a variance through the zoning commission.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I've got a few questions for Paul. Yeah, the density, and I don't believe I got one email saying that they had decided they didn't agree with condition 3, but I don't believe I got the other email saying that you probably sent it to me, I apologize, I didn't see it till tonight. But I am kind of lost on the density on this.
Okay.
I just calculated it based on the old, or the original information, and got about 22 units per acre. And then I did pose a question to Paul on what's the double D allowed just without the modifications based on unit type, and it's about 14.5. And then somewhere in the middle of this is the allowed density based on a fairly complex formula. But it sounds like the revision they made, they actually need more land because maybe they added more two-bedroom units. Is that correct?
So
Okay.
in the DD zoning district, the formula, or I'm sorry, the density is calculated based on number of bedrooms. So if it's 2 bedrooms or more, you are required to provide 2,500 square feet of land area
Right.
per 2-bedroom or more. A 1-bedroom unit, you're required to provide 2,000 square feet of land area. That is the underlying and the basic formula. Then there is a bonus allowed for parking that is included within the structure. And so we calculated a bonus formula. This allows you to reduce the amount of land area by a certain percentage, and it calculated out to be 9%. And that's how we're coming up with these figures.
Okay.
But as far as, it's hard to give you the exact number of units per dwelling unit for this based, because we don't know. It could be a combination of, 2 bedrooms, a reduction of 2 bedrooms, or, if you
Yeah.
tweak that mix, that unit mix, then it changes all the numbers.
Yeah, changes their traffic study too, I suppose, potentially. I read in the staff report specific reference to a 37-foot buffer. Is that referring up in the northeast corner there?
Correct.
That particular buffer to try and buffer the single family there? Okay. And is that buffer going to be, what's that going to be made of? Is it just the existing stuff that's
The
out there?
proposal was the existing vegetation that is there, that this landscape easement was to remain undisturbed.
Okay. There's a couple things on this plan that are actually off-site, so they're not really part of this zoning approval, like the entrance and exit points and stuff. How is that, if this is approved, how is there control over that to get compliance if, something changes since it's not part of the plan? Or is the off-site stuff considered part of this plan approval also? Like the access points?
As far as what changes, as far as the,
Let's say it's not installed, for example. Like the driveway, for example. Or say, so they're showing two driveways.
Correct.
Which are pretty important. and then say, the one on the south through the township property. Let's say that something happens and that doesn't get installed. Is that considered part of this approval, even though it's outside the boundaries of the parcel limits we're
I think
reviewing?
that could be addressed through conditions
Who can-
by the zoning commission that this development have 2 points of access as shown on the plan that was submitted.
Okay. And, okay, that sounds fine. And then I did have a question in your markup plan.
And just one other, so this is a landlocked parcel, and this part is not under contract by the applicant.
Understood. I did see in the markup drawing in the PowerPoint some more detail on how that south access point is going to, yes. No, that wasn't it. Yeah, that one. And it goes through the township property, which I see, but then it outlets onto the, that strip center to the west. Is there some access easement rights in place for that allow
Yes,
that?
there are currently access easement rights from Firestone all the way over to IHM.
Okay, so they could piggyback on that?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yes. I didn't see the traffic impact study in the packet that was delivered. Could you
was not.
summarize that for us? I'm sorry.
My apologies. So this drawing was the result of the recommendations of that traffic impact study. And basically, the turn lanes that I mentioned earlier, that was what was recommended. And another recommendation from the Hamilton County engineer was to extend improvements to Pine Terrace, which this is Pine Terrace here, this is Sacred Heart. The difficulty in doing so is that this property here is under separate ownership. This is the property I was mentioning to earlier, and it's not part of the application as a private residence. So in order to extend these improvements beyond Pine Terrace, right-of-way would be needed here, and that's not part of the application. So we received clarification from the county engineer that this was preferred, but not going to be a requirement at this time. In the future, if this property is to develop, most likely it would be a requirement to dedicate right-of-way at that time. But with this application, again, it's preferred but not required because they don't own that property.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions.
Commissioner McBride?
Yeah, Paul, just to follow up on the traffic study, because I didn't see that either, and maybe this is better
And I
for
can
the
pass it
applicant.
around if you all...
I was just wondering, I mean, like AM Peak, does it have most of the trips going out Stonegate Drive and then heading south, or what's the split on those, the AM Peak traffic going out Stonegate versus through the retail?
I'll look at that.
Or and maybe the applicant can address that.
We can let the applicant revisit that, if that's okay.
That's fine. And I think that was really the big question that I know. One other question for you. On the 37.5-foot wide buffer there on the east, can you put the aerial back up and show us roughly where that is? Have they documented what plant material is in there to make sure that that is in fact going to provide a year-round buffer, or is that, honeysuckle and...
I've walked it myself, but I'll let the applicant address that.
Okay.
There is some mature vegetation in there. There's also honeysuckle in there.
Okay.
There is a mixture of both. The honeysuckle is primarily on the edge of the, what is wooded, and that, actually, the honeysuckle would be disturbed during construction, but honeysuckle is invasive, so it probably wouldn't hurt to remove that, and then, if necessary, to put something that is not invasive that would allow for the other trees to take place, or to take better root. But there is some mature vegetation in there that is worth saving. I know the applicant did walk that property with an arborist, I believe, so they can answer that question.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm also, would like to know about the traffic a little bit, but we'll get to that. As far as the neighboring multifamily, I guess it's Stonegate and SEM Manor, do we know, were they in compliance with the zoning density?
So the existing Stonegate is well under, so in the D zoning district, that's just the multifamily zoning district, it allows for 14 dwelling units per net acre. And that is based off of, it doesn't differentiate between 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. It just says 1 unit is required to have 3,000 square feet of land area. So the existing Stonegate development, I had this written down. And the applicant may be able to address this, but they were well under 14 units.
I don't need the exact percentage, just yes or no, were they?
They're well under.
Okay.
Selm Manor is slightly above, and that was approved as part of their development plan back in the 60s. But they are slightly above, and that's based off of most of the units. There's a mixture of efficiencies, primarily efficiencies, some one-bedrooms, which was reaffirmed when they went through the zoning commission a couple of times within the past couple of years, and they're under renovation. But so this Selm Manor is under a separate development plan. Stonegate is under the remaining development plan. And if you'll recall, these were approved as duplexes.
Right.
However, they ended up constructing single family.
Sure.
So again, that was another contributor to them being well under what they could have had, as, allowed under the D zoning district.
Okay. Who has responsibility for the south exit? Creating that, right now it's sort of a one-way, depending on who gets there first, getting in and
From
out.
Selm Manor?
Yeah. Is that the township or is that the applicant?
So, I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand your question.
The exit coming through, back to Beachmont through the mall, the strip mall area.
Mhm.
Who is going to modify that?
The applicant.
Okay. Then I'll wait for that question then. Commissioners, anything else? Back to Paul?
Yeah, I had one more question. The existing Stonegate, is that a D or is that a double? Is there a planned
It's a
government?
planned district, yes.
It's planned district?
Mhm.
Okay. So it looks like the new driveway is going to remove some amenities that are in that already. Is that going to create an issue as been being non-compliant with the existing plan?
I'm going to let the applicant respond to that as well.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
do believe they have plans to replace some of those amenities.
Okay, thanks.
And Paul, just one other question from me, and that has to do with, would it be, because that, I don't know if that would be considered offsite or not, would it be appropriate to condition anything on the consolidation of this parcel with the Stonegate parcel?
I think that's appropriate to ensure, with this access, I think there either needs to be a consolidation or a requirement that an easement be provided to ensure that that access remains, if the property were to be sold. It won't change the conditions of the current final development plan for the existing Stonegate development. That will still remain on its own final development plan, whereas this will also still remain on its own final development plan. So it won't change any of the conditions from the existing development plan, but it would ensure that the access would, I guess to address Mr. Ellis' concern, that if the access is not constructed at all, that would ensure that that would happen.
Okay, at this time, we'd like for the applicant to come forward. State your name, address, affiliation.
Hello, I'm Neil Marison, Marison Company, 312 Walnut Street, Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's a pleasure to be here again in front of the commission and concerned citizens. And looking forward to presenting to you the proposal that is the result of our listening to every to everything you guys had to say a couple years ago, having numerous meetings with neighbors and citizens to hear their concerns, just so we understood all the concerns and issues well, so we could come up with a proposal that hopefully addresses, we think, address all the issues well. Per the conversation that was just going on, unlike the prior time we were here, in which the proposal was for a wholly independent apartment community, this is a phase 3. This proposal is a phase 3 of our existing Stonegate property. And we've originally built that phase 1 of that project in 1972, and then in 1996 we built phase 2 of that project, and now this new proposal is to add a phase 3 that addresses the interest of the township for the kinds of housing alternatives that the township has requested us to consider providing. Okay. So the idea is that we will be consolidating, as Ms. McBride indicated. The plan is to consolidate. At this point, of course, that's pending lender approval and that kind of thing, but that is the plan, so that we have a final development that's a phase 1, 2, and 3. And okay, so relative to the amenity question that was just brought up, part of this, not part of this proposal, but part of our plan is, should this proposal go through, our plan would be to be upgrading amenities in the existing Stonegate as it is right now. The amenity that you saw coming out was a tennis court, and that's not used very much. But okay, and we have been fortunate to enjoy very high occupancies at the existing Stonegate, at 98, 99% for each of the last 7 years. So we know that the community enjoys the product that we've been providing. As Paul was indicating, the existing property is 30.66 acres with 281 apartments, which ends up being about 9 units per acre. And should the proposed addition of Stonegate be approved, the total Stonegate property will consist of 411 units on 36.33 acres, which comes out to just about 11.3 units per acre. Okay. Where do I point this? Okay. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so as Paul covered a lot of this, the proposal has been reviewed by Hamilton County and approved, and I can say there were many of the commissioners made very complimentary comments about, because they were around the last time around, about kind of listening and adapting the proposal accordingly. And as Paul said, they had these 3 conditions, 2 of them related to what gets presented at the final development plan, and then the density issue. It was also of course, are reviewed by the township staff, who also recommended that the zoning be approved, and Paul has reviewed the conditions that that they would like to see addressed as well. And then we also received, I don't know if each of you have received, a letter from the Anderson Economic Development Committee. Did you get those? No. No? Okay. Paul can provide that to you. Staff can provide that to you. But they also reviewed the proposal and support the application. They say they strongly recommend the zoning commission approve the zone change for this development. They would like to have input relative to the design and they just want to ensure the multiple access points to the proposed development.
Good evening. My name's Adam Marison with the Marison Company at 312 Walnut Street, Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth to some of the details of some of the questions that you guys have raised already and some comments you raised to Paul, and hopefully answer a lot of questions, and feel free to ask questions along the way if you'd like. This slide right here is essentially a site plan rendering of what it would look like with the third phase of added to phase 1 and 2 of the existing stone gate. Down to the bottom right, you see Forest Hill Baptist Church. To the left is Sem Manor as well. And then the southern access by the Salt Dome, and then the drive off of Stonegate Drive across from Pembridge, which is an existing curb cut that already aligns with Pembridge, which will be retained.
Can you
Sorry.
highlight that with a pointer as you go along?
Sorry. So this is Pembridge, existing. This curb cut right here exists for the parking lot of the clubhouse. So the new drive is going to come across through that way and utilize that existing curb cut to ensure straight line of sight. Then the new drive comes into the new phase here, and then this southern drive comes out through this way, which we will dive into more details about that. And then here's a list of concerns from 2016, and then we added some of 2018 based on county review, staff review, and just input in general. So you see the proximity, family residence, proposed building character and materials, proposed building heights, the landscaping and buffering, traffic impact, and the 2 oak trees on Nagel Road, the southern ingress, egress, stormwater, and then the density. So these are the findings from Case 1, 2016 from the Zoning Commission. And here's what was proposed during that 2016 proposal. It was an independent project that was not connected to Stonegate. It was three-story buildings and fairly dense, as you can see, but then primarily the concern, one concern in terms of proximity, was in the top northeast corner where approximate distance to the nearest home was 120 feet. And then this building 3 was proposed that had a 358-foot proximity to Nagel Road, which then that single-family homeowner right here was of concern during this proposal. And then after our revisions, we have roughly 225 feet distance separated now from the main building and the nearest single-family home at Stonegate Homes. The main building is now roughly 595 feet from Nagel, and the new property line, which is the far eastern side, which accompanies that landscape area that we've discussed, or Paul had discussed, that's 510 feet to Nagel. So as you can see, it has changed quite some bit from the last proposal. So the proposed site plan here
is it's going to be 130 units, 52 units were taken off from the original proposal, and it's 52 one-bedroom units, 78 two-bedroom. There are 234 parking spaces, 108 of those are covered. As Paul kind of ran through, at the southern side of the proposed site, there's a row of garages here, and then there's garages attached to the back side of this building, and then underneath this main building is a semi-below grade parking structure, which you'll see on this slide. It's depicted here, is that semi-below grade. The southern side is what is exposed. The other side will be below grade, the northern, eastern, and of course, western side. And the point of entry is right here on the southern side. So it's a ramp that goes down from the northwest corner or northeast corner of building 2 right here, goes down into that parking structure. Here's a bird's eye view. You have SEM right here on the left side. On the right side, you have Forest Hills Baptist Church. And you can see that our intent of the architectural design is to fit in with mansard or pitched roofs. So we propose the mansard roofs. Helps to conceal mechanical units, HVAC on the roof. And this is the salt dome, which you can slightly see here that the southern access of what's being proposed there. And this is the detention area. Over here is an existing detention area at Stonegate today. Here's just another angle from this point of view. You see Stonegate Apartments here and here. This is SEM over here. And these are building 1 and 2. And then through this section is that existing tree mass and plant material that we intend to try to preserve as much as we can because we want that buffer as well for these new proposed units as well as the previous concerns from neighboring residents. So it's a combination of that for that buffer for us. Proposed building character, they're designed to be of siding and brick and some stone with the new mansard and pitched roofs is our intent to adhere to the comments prior of it didn't fit architecturally in with the nearby properties of like-kind zoning. The pool area, which is on, actually I'll go back. Pool area is right here. And the proposed outdoor amenity space is actually on top of that corner of the garage because it is below grade in that corner. So this is just a depiction of what we intend to have out on that space. Within the main building, building 1, there will be a new fitness center, community center, and a community room that will be used by the residents. So the new proposed units in front of you will have its own new amenities. And then on top of that, the existing Stonegate clubhouse, we intend to renovate and upgrade the amenities to be a little bit more modern, a larger fitness center. So the tennis court that will go away, it's not our intent to replace it, but instead just add amenities that are more current of this time for apartments. So on this site section and views, which we had this on the last proposal when we presented to you all in 2016. What we're going to look at first is the east-west section, which if you're walking this line looking north is what you're going to see on the next slide. And then we'll move into north-south section right here looking west. So if you're walking through, you're going to see, because you're walking through that top northern edge of building 1, behind here is the Stonegate Apartments existing, as well as this. And then over this way is where that buffer area is, the existing tree mass. And then kind of beyond that is those row of single-family homes at Stonegate Homes. And then over to the far right, you have Nagel Road and the first house on Pine Terrace. So this next slide, I can jump back to the site section view if needed, but this is walking essentially north-south on the far eastern side of the proposed site. So you're looking west, so you would be, if you're going all the way from the Salt Dome, you would essentially be walking kind of through the Forest Hills Baptist Church, and then you'd be going into the landscape buffer area, looking at the main building 1, and then you would continue on and you'd run into the backyard detention area by 8015 Stonegate Drive. So what's depicted here is shows some landscape buffer, but what exists there today is very mature honeysuckle, but there are very mature trees that are set kind of farther back away from that building, more to the east, but we will get into more details of that, and of course addressing in all questions. So in terms of building heights, what the zoning language kind of explains, and it's a little bit of a calculation, not too different than the lot area requirement, but on building 1, the building is to the closest property owner, which is Forest Hills Baptist Church, is 61 feet. So it's well beyond the 30-foot required setback, which is the minimum. Building 2 is within that requirement of 30 feet. Building 2 is proposed to be no more than 40 feet. We envision it to be just at 40 feet. And building 1 will be 40 feet tall, but from the average grade line, it is 42 feet, which is the factor of how things are calculated per the zoning resolution. The allowable height, though, for building 1, because of the 61-foot setback of building 1, is actually 55 feet 6 inches. Okay, it's 50 feet 6 inches. My mistake. So on this slide at the bottom here is the height requirement per zoning, and this describes that no building should exceed 40 feet in height unless such a building is set back from the street line a distance of not less its height and is set back from all other property lines in distance of 30 feet plus 2 feet for each foot in height in excess of 40 feet. So that's the calculation of where the 61 feet from the Forest Hills Baptist Church comes into play. So on this depiction, you'll see that from the average grade line of building 1, it's 42 feet 10 inches from the average grade line, which is also another calculation. But so if the height requirement is 50 feet maximum, we're within what's permissible on this specific location of building 1. This slide is depicting how the average grade was calculated. So there are 11 points around building 1 where the grade level was taken, and that list is right here, starting with the 834 down to 834, which gives a total of 9,144. That divided by 11, because there are 11 points listed here. The average grade line is 831.27. And then based on this calculation here is how the 2.73 feet was derived at as to where we rounded up to 2 feet 10 inches, which gives us the 42 feet 10 inches from average grade line. So now we're going to get into the updated views of the site from neighboring properties. So we have a view from 8015 Stonegate Drive, which is the nearest single-family home. View 2 is just kind of down the backyards of the existing Stonegate single-family homes. And then view 3 here is just the new entrance for the proposed development. And then view 4 is from over at Nagel and Pine Terrace. So view 1, this is standing at 8015 Stonegate Drive. This is a detention area that exists. This is an existing Stonegate apartment building, and beyond is part of Building 1 that would be visible. In this corner of the property on our landscape plan, we are depicting evergreens being planted to help address that over time. And this photo, just because it's in front of us, this kind of shows some of that tree massing that exists in the area that we intend to retain and preserve. This is view 2 from behind a home at 8025 Stonegate, and here is existing tree mass made very opaque so that you could see part of the building here as it's proposed. During the summertime, you wouldn't be able to see much or any of that building. During the winter time, you might be able to see some of the roof lines and some of the top sections of it, but with the way that the tree mass looks during this time of year, it's still a pretty healthy buffer with a decent amount of height. View 3, so this is the entrance. So just over here on the far right side, this is the existing parking lot of the clubhouse at Stonegate, and so this entryway is what's proposed, and some landscaping that is proposed, along with some stone walls to identify the new entry. We depicted a gate here just because it was a concern of how potentially people might want to use the access going all the way through to the southern access route over to that shopping center or to the existing easement. So we're proposing that we might want to have a gate there just to help deter people going through the property that aren't living there or living in the rest of the community too. So it's not something that we're married to, but it was just a thought of that we could potentially consider doing that based on how it's used. View 4, so this is, summertime photo, but this existing tree mass that is on the township property today, it's fairly deep, and the section that we intend to preserve is roughly, I think it's 14,450 square feet, about 0.32 acres, and within that section is when it does get past the honeysuckle like Paul described, and it gets into more mature trees where there are some oak trees in there. There are a few ash trees, which the arborists determined that if they're not already dead, that they potentially will be. But it is our intent, though, to enhance that buffer area because it just helps protect the views of the proposed units. But again, we can dive into that a little bit. So the landscape design strategy, so that existing preserved area, you see the calculations there. It's about 0.32 acres. We want to preserve it as much as possible. Our landscape plan has 22 evergreens proposed, 12 of which are planned to be along the northeastern property line to help enhance that buffer, so over time it should improve. And there is a little bit of honeysuckle that would come out. So on this color rendering of the landscape, the buffer here is, so this edge of existing buffer right to about this point is the honeysuckle that would be removed, and we're replacing it with trees. This corner area, we do not intend to disturb that during construction process. And in this corner specifically, there are tall mature trees that were in that one view. Those, of course, we do not intend to ever disturb. And they wouldn't be during construction process just because of where they're located. And then we're putting some buffering down this way between Building 2 and the Township properties. Along here, this section of existing trees, they will be disturbed during detention area construction, but this section specifically behind that apartment building should not be disturbed whatsoever. Whoops. One last thing, sorry. Here's the front entryway that's depicting tree plantings at the front main entrance. Yeah.
So let me address this because it seemed like maybe the traffic impact study didn't get out to y'all. So let's see, at a high level, what it showed is that currently there are 646 trips peak AM and 909 trips peak PM on Nagel Road. The total increase in trips as a result of this proposal is 40 trips out of the 646 trips in the AM. And please note that some of them, and nobody knows until it actually starts happening, how they will divide up between going south or going north. And then the study showed 52 trips in the PM added to the 909 trips currently. I shouldn't say added to the 909. Some portion of the 52 trips will end up hitting Nagel and adding to the 909 trips. So you can see that percentage-wise, it's a small impact on the existing Nagel and Stonegate intersection and the Nagel traffic itself. And then you have some, we have some data because as I said, you just don't know how the traffic will be used. But if 2/3 of the people chose to go north and 1/3 of the people chose to go south, then in the AM you would have 14 new people, more traffic going south on Nagel and 5 headed north on Nagel. And you can just kind of see the numbers there. So the conclusion of the traffic impact study was that it has a minimal impact on Nagel, no impact that required any changes, but as Paul indicated, we're proposing nonetheless that some turn lanes get put on there to help with flow of traffic. And that would be pending a I think as you know, Nagel is governed by Hamilton County, and so any changes to the road there would be pending their final approval. And that's that. Any questions on that, since that was a big issue? I mean, not big issue, but one that came up a couple of times.
Well, I think we're going to have several questions. You want us to address them on just this slide, or because commissioners, you want to go just talk about traffic right now and come back to the others?
I'll do it however you
I
want.
see some nods, so let's
I
talk
just
about.
know this was a,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So Commissioner Reagan, you want to start on traffic, or you have?
I don't really have any questions regarding
Okay.
traffic. Everything is pretty well spelled out here.
okay.
I did have a question on the traffic, which is 40 trips in the morning. How did you come up with that? Because I saw in your literature that your target market is professionals between ages of 30 and 70.
Yes.
So if your target market is professionals, that tells me that most of your residents are going to be going to work, and that's not even a half a trip per unit. How did you come up with that?
Well, I can't tell you because I didn't
secret.
come up with it.
Oh, okay.
It was the traffic impact study was done by an expert who knows how to come up with that stuff, who
was
has
that?
worked with the county, Jack Flume.
Oh, I don't
And,
see him here.
No, he's not here. He wasn't able to be here.
Oh, okay.
But he's well-known by the county, and the county gave him the scope of work that they wanted to see and reviewed his scope of work.
So his full report has been given to staff?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to go through it, so
We have a copy if you want. Yeah.
I appreciate that, but again, we haven't had a chance to review it in detail,
Okay.
so.
That's all my questions were. Thank you.
Commissioner?
I have no questions at this time for specific on traffic.
But I do. So,
Commissioner McBride.
Larson,
Yeah.
So I'm obviously very familiar with Mr. Flume's work.
Yes.
And he's got a split in his, and I just have
Yeah.
gotten to look at this for just a few
50-50
minutes.
split.
He's got a 50-50
Yeah.
split in there, and you're using a 67% using Stonegate as opposed to the 50% that Jack used?
Here I am, yeah. Just in
Because
case.
that was your opinion that...
No, it's not my opinion. It was just in case somebody said, well, I don't know, what if it's not 50-50? What if it's more this way or that way? And I know the concern is more around the traffic that comes out Stonegate to Nagel.
Correct.
So I just showed, in case somebody was concerned with that, I did the calculations that Jack didn't do.
And I agree more with your calculations than
Okay.
Jack's calculations.
But that's not my
You
opinion.
can tell him I
Yeah.
said so.
Okay.
At any rate, I just question that 50-50 split. So are there any plans then to widen Stonegate at Nagel? Because right now, that's just, it's not even striped. And I just wonder if there isn't the need to do, I mean, if one guy's wanting to go north onto Nagel from Stonegate.
Those were the Nagel Road improvements that required the easements that Paul talked about.
But I'm talking about Stonegate itself, not
Oh,
Nagel.
Stonegate. No. No, actually, there's no,
I mean, it's not striped, it's just, and there's parking allowed on both sides of the street right now. Paul, did the fire department get a chance to, I mean, I know most of the subdivisions, we've gone back and said you can only park on one side of the street. It's not, I mean, it's a very residential street, similar to what you find in a subdivision. Are they going to continue to allow parking on both sides?
I don't think we do allow parking, do we?
I see them in the pictures, so,
So the section of Stonegate closest to Nagel does not allow parking. Further down, when you get past that first cul-de-sac to the Stonegate homes, once you get past that, that's when parking does become allowed. But up near where what you're discussing and what you're pointing out, there's parking not allowed in that specific area.
I mean, I guess my concern is, and I don't want to play junior traffic engineer here, but if coming out in the AM peak hour particularly, if one car's coming out to Nagel and they want to go northbound, they could conceivably stall out the rest of that traffic, could they not? I mean, without it being striped. And
I
don't
think
know
to
if
your
it's-
point, having it painted to have a left and a right turn lane to exit onto Nagel is an absolute great point, and we would advise doing that as well.
Is
I
it
know
wide
that.
enough to do, I mean, it looks like it could be.
Yeah, Stonegate is
would need
a
36
public road.
36
It's a
feet.
public road, and I believe it is 36 feet as it exists today. So it's taken care of by the township. It is a township road, Paul, right? It's a township road. So to our knowledge, it is wide enough that you could do something like that.
Okay.
But as a part of in terms of the turn lanes, as it relates to the county review, they're only addressing the Nagel Road and Stonegate intersection. It is our thought too, we had that same thought that you fast forward to where work was being proposed and final development plans essentially for those road improvements, we would include painting Stonegate there to signify a left and a right turn lane exiting to go north or south on Nagel.
Okay, I wish we'd had a chance to look at
Yeah.
this.
I agree. I wish I'm a bit skeptical on the numbers. Was this during school day, weekend, for those numbers?
This was done back in November.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's typical peak hours during the school day.
Okay. And again, without seeing the data, I agree with the inbounds and outbounds with 230 parking spaces. Seems kind of light for traffic, so.
Yeah, it's 7 to 8 a.m. in the morning, and then 5 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon is when the the times that counts were derived.
That's the peak range? Okay,
Those are the hours for peak, AM and PM.
okay. Why don't we move on to the rest of your presentation?
Yes, sir. So this is just a schematic kind of showing what was sent to the county for their review. The county approved this schematic. There's another slide that kind of is a more pulled out view, but the light gray area here, this is essentially that new paving area. So all of these potential widening of Nagel will occur on the western side of the property, western side of the road, I'm sorry, which is existing Stonegate property here, and then this is Township property here. And these are those oak trees that are in question. So it is our intent to work with the Township and the county to ensure that these do not get disturbed and be preserved. So if you're going northbound on Nagel here, this is that turn lane going into Stonegate. And then if you're going southbound, it just allows the right turn to go into Stonegate there. And this is Pine Terrace, right here. So this, the teal area, is just the easement area being proposed on the township property for making such road improvements. And this is the single-family homeowner property that Paul had pointed out where an easement does not exist. Southern access across township property. So Richard Arnold of MSP, myself, and township staff, including Paul, were on site together, walked this to ensure that we have much more specifics to be able to identify how this is going to be constructed through the township property. It will be reusing the existing pavement that exists there today. The recycling center is right here, which there was a rough schematic kind of done of how the township's going to reorganize those recycling dumpsters and work that out with Rumpke. And so the site essentially is right here, the proposed site. So then the access where this will remain to SEM, and then new curbing and a sidewalk to be running along this side of that access. And then from this point, there is that existing easement that does run across this property over here, and then they can exit here, and they also could go right down here and make a right turn only onto Beachmont.
Could I ask just a question? Is the east side of that proposed access drive, is that going to be curbed as well? Or just
Yeah,
painted?
in the east side, yes.
So it's curbed on both sides?
Yes, there's an existing fence line that runs, and we're moving and relocating the fence line here, and so there is curbing put there. There are sections of break just because of drainage that exists.
Mm-hmm.
This is just essentially highlighting and showing that easement that exists through the shopping center. We spoke with the shopping center about this. It's a different shopping center owner from the previous time we proposed it. They didn't have any serious objections to this. If anything, they like it just because it's driving traffic in here. And hopefully they find a new tenant for their property. And that is that existing light on Beachmont where that Applebee's is. So once you get to this point, it depends on what your choice is, but you have a couple ways to get out onto Beachmont, depending on the direction you're going from there.
Got a question.
Yes.
This plan shows new landscape islands and curb modifications. Is that part of your improvements?
It's my understanding they
Back behind
exist.
Applebee's. where
Those
the
curbings?
curb-
My understanding is those exist there.
Yeah. So when Fresh Time was built, they had to install all of that, essentially. So,
I mean, a question, I have a little bit of concern about if you go on the west side of that access drive across from Applebee's. You've got, I don't know, what, 12, 15 parking spaces there that are going to back out, that do back out today onto that access drive, but according to Jack's standards, 50% of your traffic is going to go that way as well, adding additional traffic in there. I don't know how staff feels about it, but I mean, I have real concerns about those cars backing out into that access drive, particularly, you know, the traffic does back up there. You've got people that might be pedestrians crossing to go to the Applebee's, or I think maybe employees sometimes park there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the way to address that is we don't have something cited at this point. It is a very good point to be concerned about, but it was not something that's proposed on the schematic. Now, working with the shopping center owner, you know, we're going to have to discuss that and make sure that it is safe coming through there. Because what will come in discussion in your scenario, obviously, if there is a fender bender, then, you know, liability and things of that nature, based on who's using that access point. But it definitely can be something we can address at the final development stage. You want to do this? Thank you.
Good evening, zoning commission, staff. Richard Arnold, McGill Smith Punchin. We prepared the stormwater management plan for the site, and as was alluded to earlier in the presentation, there's an existing detention basin that's a little bit west of our site, and we're basically going to expand that. So we've just basically utilized the Hamilton County Department of Public Works standards in determining what the storage requirements are for the site. And based upon that, it's actually, it calculates to around 77,000 cubic feet of stormwater, where during a 50-year event, we're releasing a 10-year pre-development runoff. So I think it's pretty standard. If you have any other questions on it, any more detail, I can answer them, but otherwise, I mean, we're conforming with the Hamilton County Department of Public Works.
We have the report, correct?
Right in there is the existing detention basin. We're going to modify the outlet structures, release it down here more at this point so we can get a little more vertical headroom in the basin to gain the volume that we need. And then along here in this area is the additional storage that we need. We'll have a small, non-structural, for the most part, retaining wall along the parking lot. When I say non-structural, I'm looking at something with less than 42 inches reveal for the most of it. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for stormwater? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the complex density calculation. So Paul described it in terms of the requirements for one bedroom, for 2 bedrooms, and so that comes out to a total of 299,000 square feet before the reduction that is allotted for covered parking. Okay, and that reduction for covered parking is 9.23%, given the mix that we're proposing, and therefore what we're short is the 27,599 feet, out of which 21. Okay, 21,416 square feet, which, as Commissioner Lewis had said earlier, is 91% compliant with regulation. So we're requesting a modification based on the idea that we're very much in compliance, largely in compliance, that we've done a lot to increase the setbacks from neighboring homes. As you saw from what Adam had presented, they're more than doubled, and you saw from the view shots that they're very unobtrusive, and that and then, as we were saying, the existing stone gate has 1,335,000 square feet, and so once it's combined, then, and you do this calculation, then we're far in excess by 600,000+ square feet of land more than is required.
Our conclusions were simply that we addressed the traffic impact and the accommodations on Nagel Road. The southern ingress egress, we're providing more specifics and details. Proposed building heights and views, went into detail describing the average grade line and the heights of the buildings, of what they're being proposed as, and that we're compliant based on what is permissible, based on the distances from the neighboring property, specifically Forest Hills Baptist Church. The building character and materials are more in line with what exists at SEM or Stonegate today, and that the building's roofs have also changed to be mansard, and they're not flat roof like they were in our proposal in 2016. The landscaping, screening, and buffers specifically has been enhanced due to the eastern property line buffer that we hope to retain, but also enhance as well where we can without disturbing what exists today. And then the density, which was just kind of touched on, that once you combine it with the existing Stonegate, the unit count or the unit per acre goes to about 11.3 units an acre, and what exists today at Stonegate is about 9 units an acre. And then the lot area, square footage, we have an exorbitant amount of excess at Stonegate today. So when you combine them, we feel that it is reasonable to accept the modification of what's being proposed today regarding those items. And that is all.
Okay. We'll start. Commissioner Reagan, questions for any subject?
Yes, actually. What's the total dollar amount of this potential property investment?
15 to 16 million.
Okay. And
That's the total project cost, including land.
And what environmentally sustainable construction or maintenance methods do you plan to use?
We would hope to be LEED certified. Would we strive for gold? Yes, and I think it's very achievable.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks for your presentation, very thorough and detailed.
You're welcome.
Good, very helpful information. The existing Double D, we noted the tennis courts being just removed. What's the plan to, which is a significant amenity, I get that they're not used that much anymore, but is there any plan to replace that? Because I see that as being a significant amenity change.
We won't be replacing with a tennis court per se, but let me get to the slide. So existing Stonegate has a very high population of kids, and so the amenity that we intend to enhance is what you see here is a tot lot, which needs to be replaced, and we plan to replace it. And what would be proposed Separate from what's being proposed today, though, would be a new playground area over in this open area on the property at Stonegate, which would be a playground and some type of a splash park. I don't know if you've seen that before, but something
I
to
have.
really, something to really enhance that for the demographics that are at Stonegate. Now, the other top kind of request that we've gotten from our residents is a basketball court as opposed to the tennis court. So the tennis court goes away, and then based on a lot of the land that we have around that clubhouse, we hope to find maybe an area to put in something like that. But we won't be putting in a new tennis court.
Okay.
What exists at the clubhouse today is a racquetball court, which never gets used. It gets used by actually a woman that teaches flag twirling. And so we intend to convert that into a larger, more current fitness center. And then it can be 2-floor because of the height that exists. And so the second floor, what we've typically seen done in that remodel is...
That's okay. You don't have to go on about the racquetball court. Appreciate that, though. The landscaping plan, I did notice there's really no buffer for the church. What was the thinking there?
Well, the amount of land that is there, it's hard to propose much of a plant material that really can create a lot of buffer. What I did do is I met with the pastor 3 different times over the past 2 years, but most recently about this proposal, and kind of discussed this property line specifically, and that what we hope to do is something there, but we didn't feel it was appropriate to propose something that just didn't seem realistic as it stands today.
So no buffer basically there?
Not being proposed today, but we intend to do something in conjunction with the church owner.
Okay. I was looking at sheet A-002. The layout's funny on that. Can you explain to me why? Is that just an error or something?
Sorry, which sheet?
A002. And it's not that big a deal, except that if you get a plan sheet in that's divergent from the other ones, and it can create some confusion when you are trying to enforce it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
You're talking about the fold-outs,
Yeah.
the larger fold-out that we delivered to the commissioners.
Looks like that's got an old...
Proposed parking plan.
Yeah, it looks like that's got some kind of old layout on it or something.
So which...
What's your specific question? What part of that?
My question is that in there by mistake or not?
The entire sheet?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on slide 16. But so is it specifically around Building 1 and how that looks? That's the proposed semi-below grade parking structure.
Okay. Is that what that's demonstrating, is the below
Yeah,
grade
the
parking
park-
and the sheet and the
Yes, sir.
building
So
has been
the-
removed?
Yeah, the parking plan, it removes the view of the residential
I
part.
understand.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
all it's trying to depict is the garage.
That
and
makes
there's
sense now. Yep.
66 spaces, and then if you want me to
No,
continue.
that makes sense.
Okay.
And you guys mentioned in the presentation about the design, and I heard that you got feedback on the design last time, but I also heard you say the Economic Development Committee wanted to have input on the design as well.
Yeah,
What's going on with the design?
Well, they had suggested that it be more in line with the design guidelines of Anderson, and the first proposal was very much more not conducive or similar in design to what exists nearby today with SEM and Stonegate. It had flat roofs, so it was very more modern. So we believe that the Economic Development Committee's comments were that they would like to see it, I think more specifically, go in the direction to fit within Anderson Township's design guidelines. We proposed something that was very much in line with Stonegate's buildings in terms of more of pitched roofs, siding, brick. So
Right.
the we are more than welcoming any input from the Economic Development Committee before it heads to final development
Okay.
plan.
All right, so it could be changes potentially to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Now-
that's something easy for us to adhere to.
I had a question for you on your existing building, because one of the, well, what is your maintenance plan for your entire Stonegate? When I drove through there a little bit, and I like Stonegate a lot, but it looked like there was some deferred maintenance going on in there, like there was paint chipping. I did see one of the buildings was being re-roofed, but it looked like it was maybe the maintenance was slipping on that a little bit, which of course is really important, the long-term management of units like this. What's your plan with that?
So the building that you're specifically talking about is this one, 1534, I believe. So this section of Stonegate is the original phase in 1972. So
Right.
there are these buildings, so going into the 2018 year, our budget had accounted for replacing siding, roofs, and gutters on that building, this building, and that building. That work is underway currently, and so before April is out, it'll have new siding, it'll have new roofs, new gutters, new downspouts, so it won't look like that. And so those are very specifically addressed to what you probably witnessed, and trim work just throughout the property, just routine maintenance capital. I mean, it's a lot to keep up on, but we have a very healthy budget that's going to be addressing a lot of those things.
Okay.
So,
I'm just about done. You mentioned in your presentation that you talked to the ownership of the mall where Applebee's is, and they didn't have a concern with potential traffic through there, which is commendable. But do you feel like you don't have rights over that property? I mean, why did you have to ask the question?
it was more of just a friendly phone call, just to let them know that this is being proposed, and this driveway access through the township property will potentially lead X amount of cars that, you know, they're either going to drive through their parking lot, or they're going to, who knows where they're going to go, but it was more of a friendly phone call to let them know, and that the existing easement we would like to piggyback on, and if I remember correctly, a big part of that easement is the responsibility of maintenance and costs. So that was kind of the other point of the phone call, so, which we're more than welcome to adhere to, and they have no issues with us being a part of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Goddard?
Yes, a couple questions. It was stated along the detention there'd be about a 42-inch high retaining wall. What sort of safety measures for pedestrians would be in effect along there? You know, you mentioned kids, things like that. A 42-inch fall for a kid is kind of tall.
Yeah, we would probably simply address it with fencing to ensure that as best we can right along that western edge of the property. Yeah.
A lot of times about the landscape buffer, you would try to preserve during construction, you would do your best to preserve. I guess what measures would be taken to preserve that?
Well, the area that's in that crosshatched, that won't be interfered during construction. No, we're confident about that. I was trying to specifically point out that the very far western edge, western edge of the eastern buffer, sorry, it's confusing.
Yes.
This section right here, that's all honeysuckle. Mature trees or things of that nature don't start coming into play until you get into that crosshatch buffer area. So this section, yes, would be disturbed, but it's honeysuckle. We've confirmed that when we were on site. So there's no real large trees that we would affect. And this northern section here, that's where there are a few mature trees, which, if you bear with me, right here, those would not be disturbed. So we don't intend to touch that buffer area whatsoever. We want to retain it just as much as anybody. We want to protect it from both sides.
So prior construction, you'll put a fence.
Absolutely.
Construction fence through there. The construction activities won't go in the drip line of the existing trees, things like that to
Absolutely.
maintain that?
Yeah.
Location of the pool and the exterior amenities,
Yes.
you talked about how far away you were from the single-family residence, but that's the closest point to the single-family residence.
The pool area would have a
Farthest away
fence.
from your existing
Yeah.
exterior amenities.
So the pool area specifically would have a fence line around it, just to create privacy feel. But we don't, at least, it's of our opinion that the proximity of where it is to the neighboring residents, it shouldn't be an issue to us. But you just reminded me of a point. So the landscape buffer area along the north side that was in the staff report about adhering to, we would certainly adhere to that as the existing Stonegate owner and proposing this. So, to address that separation here with landscaping or some type of buffering would be of our interest as well. So this amenity area would have, fencing around it. We would probably build a fence that's not very see-through, so it's not like it would be just a metal railing with some, openings through it. It would be kind of more concealed, so it would feel secluded from neighboring residents and just in general.
You showed the gate.
Yes.
At the access point. I guess, yes, it would prevent people from cutting through, but it would also prevent people from exiting. So if a gate was introduced there, how would you actually control access for residences and prevent it from non-residents?
So the residents that would live within these proposed two buildings, they would have the control and access, whether it's key fob, clicker access that opens the gate so they can get in, so they can get out. Other than that, they would be the only residents on the property that have that access control. We would do something like a Knox box or something of the nature for emergency vehicles or anything of that nature, absolutely. And with the township, the easement agreement that, we have is, it does identify things about the emergency vehicles or, certain township vehicles having the right to get through here. So we would do what we can to ensure that. But it's just it's a form of the thought of, well, how many people might cut through? I mean, you just don't know that. And then at the different point of view for us is just the marketing of the new proposed units. It's very different, separate, feels more secluded, feels a little bit more luxurious, what have you. So.
I think the last question that comes to mind is the access through the township after you go past the Salt Dome. Talked about fence and sidewalk on the east side, curbing on the west. So it would be truly a dedicated drive at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay. And then at the access where it hits the two landscape islands, that then goes away from a dedicated drive that's new to existing traffic locations and patterns, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you put the rendered landscape plan back up for just a second?
Let's see, where am I? This way?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, maybe I misunderstood, but so the expansion of the detention area on the western side there, isn't that going to remove some of that vegetation, that colored dark green there?
Yeah, so probably this section.
Talking about LED, or have you thought about that? Or?
Well, in general, it would be the intent to do most LED products, and where appropriate, do residential style LED lighting, but for the most part, yes, it would be LED lighting throughout the site.
And I didn't see any signage, and I guess that's because it is Phase 3 of the Stonegate development. So talking about the gate from the new development, Phase 3, that would go out onto Stonegate, right now, your residents do use that same access drive, they just go through 7.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how many, but sure, people do use it.
So it seems to me, as opposed to making them go across a neighbor's property, that it might be more appropriate that it continues through the development. And then you would also obviously have to add a gate on the township side, Salt Dome side. to keep people from going in there and then having to turn around and go back out, right?
So if we did, the southern gate would be on our property. At least that's how we envision it. The existing gate at Sen, it's sometimes open, I think most of the time, other way around. Most of the time it's open and, sometimes it is closed. So when we get into discussing details of that, we don't intend to disturb their existing gate, but, they might want to change their minds on what kind of gate they have, I don't know.
Currently, it's just a chain link fence swing gate, right?
I thought it was an arm gate that swayed open and closed, and
I guess I just have some concerns about your existing residents going through SEM to use that same access and keeping this little enclave that's part of your development. So we'll have to talk about that.
no, I understand, and the gate, is something we depicted, and it's not something that we're heavily reliant on being, part of the final development plan.
And that kind of brings up, and again, we didn't really get a chance to take a look at it, but Jack's traffic study, did he look at the trips from the existing Stone Gate, using that access through the Phase 3, as well as going out to reduce the number of trips going on to Nagel?
I don't believe he did in his report. I'm pretty confident he did his analysis based on number of trips generated from this community and splitting them.
Only
I
the new
believe
trips,
so.
not the existing
I
trips.
believe so.
I mean, that might be something that you might want to get
We
looked at.
can certainly have him revise it.
The existing trips from existing Stonegate?
Yeah, just simply because, if this is going to be a more available route, and he's suggesting that it's going to be a 50-50 split, I tend to go more with your split, but 50-50 split, then it would seem to me that some of the existing Stonegate residents might choose to go this way as well, if it's not gated, removing some of the traffic that's going out on the Nagel.
I think he didn't do that in his analysis because of the gate. So if we don't do the gate, then yes, the traffic study should be revised by him. I agree with that comment.
So the tennis court's gonna go away, and then the new pool and the entertainment area and so forth, that is only for these residents of these two buildings, correct?
Yes, technically.
And then there's a HOA, isn't there, for the single-family homes?
Let's see where I can go. Yes, there's an existing HOA for
And
the...
do they have to sign off on the removal of the tennis courts and the reworking of stuff? I
They do.
don't know, just
No, they
asking.
do not. That's not part of the HOA document.
Okay. And then waste for, and this is a final development plan detail, but would you have dumpster enclosures out there, or would you have service where? I didn't see that. Oh, right, sorry. It's
very tiny, yeah.
Very tiny.
Yeah.
Very crafty, yeah, okay. Retention thing. I guess I would want to see some type of tree survey
Okay.
for that 37 and a half foot wide buffer with conditions noted for those trees, because whatever's to remain and how that would be supplemented, I think that would be an important part of any landscape plan that might come in as a final development plan should the development move forward.
Absolutely.
And then again, that issue of Stonegate just being one big open 36-foot wide street right now, if it is in fact 36 feet wide, I think striping that to include one in and a left out and a right in would certainly help to facilitate, the traffic, whether this development moves forward or not. It's something that I guess the township, Paul, might want to consider.
Absolutely.
That's everything that I had, I think, right now. Thank you.
The commissioners did a good job of taking all my questions. So, at this time, thank you for that. I think we'll open it up to people who support the proposal. Please come forward, state your name, your address, and if any affiliation. Okay. I'm sorry, you for?
I'm for it, but I have a couple of questions or conditions.
Please come forward.
Watch out. Hi, I'm Scott Winters. I live at 8015 Stonegate Drive. Basically, I'm the one that the pictures were taken that Adam took of my house in the far corner here. I would like to start off by saying thank you to the commissioner and everyone involved. It's been interesting to see how the process goes and how thorough the questions have been, especially this round. I will say that the Mayersons, I don't have any, I'm for the project because I'm pro-development, as long as my interest, my bias is property value and quality of life. From my vantage point, and former president of the HOA in Stonegate, it has been historically a very great relationship with Mayerson, and we look forward to that in the future. And I bring that up in advance to say that while I'm for it, and I'm not normally a tree hugger, but I have walked through all the woods back behind my house. And I'm not a wildlife expert or anything, but there is going to be an impact for the wildlife, specifically the deer. Currently, they do come through and they go past from east to west. It's inevitable that we're going to build there, and I believe that this is a good idea. My concern is, and Mr. Drury alluded to it, is the regards to the future of the 5+ acres that are, again, behind my house. I think both, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for Adam and his business, but I think there's a mutual request that the woods remain for noise buffering as well as light attenuation, as we've, being neighbors and along with the, being where we're at, we already hear the dumpsters, we already hear a lot of traffic and so forth, and we have a lot of wildlife. I promise you I'd look for a rare bald eagle or something. I could not find it. I'll keep looking, but I understand that it is a separate issue, but at the same time, I think this is a great opportunity for the zoning committee to consider it their commitment to say, look, to make this happen, we're going to get this tax revenue, we're going to protect that wooded area. And I worry that if we keep it separate, I know that I'm into real estate, I know everybody wants the tax dollars, but I think there comes a point in time where this would be better served as a green space. And I will reserve further comments to whenever a future hearing or discussion takes place. As far as the only other issue or concern I have, and they're probably all over it, but next to my house is that culvert, the storm drain collection point. And so right now there is erosion from Stonegate. It's about 6 feet wide and has been recessed by about 2 to 3 feet in areas. And so my concern on behalf of the street structure as well as my property and so forth, I'm concerned that how will these interconnect? Will it create more, a little bit higher? I've never seen it flood or anything. I'm not trying to make a bigger deal than it is, but do y'all have an understanding, or I don't know if that's directed more to Paul, about how or this gentleman, as far as the way the water routes go currently? I mean, right now they go from north, east down a southwest pattern. And,
Right.
And that's all I have. Thank you very much for, I feel it has been very well served in protecting me, even when I wasn't here. Thank you, Mr. McBride.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Okay, at this time, then we'll take anyone who wants to speak in opposition, come forward, state your name, your address, and any affiliation.
My name's Mary Beth Taylor, and I'm the second house in on Pine Terrace Drive.
Can you give the actual address?
8061 Pine Terrace.
Thank you.
So first, I want to say that we're thrilled that we now have a bigger buffer. I'm going to just go through very quickly a couple points, given everything that's been said. As far as the area where they're going to diminish the buffer because of building, and then they're going to plant new trees or bushes or whatever, The same builder, when he built the single-family homes, made the same promise. There's going to be an awesome buffer there. You won't even see the backs of these houses from Nagel because the buffer will be so nice. And I will tell you that the trees that were planted were about this big, and you can still see the backs of those houses because they're spaced far enough apart. And I'm not saying this to be overly critical. I'm just saying you need to be really specific about what you ask them to do because everybody's got a financial vested interest, and planting a tree this big is not the same as planting a full-size tree. So we're looking to protect our interests as well. The county only approved this zoning change, in the words, I believe, if they brought them into compliance with the double D zoning for this package. The county didn't say, let's go ahead and expand the denominator by including other properties around it so that we can bring ourselves into compliance. It just specifically said, I believe what was approved by the county was only if they can bring this package into compliance. So I would ask the zoning board to respect that and recognize that calling this phase 3 is kind of putting lipstick on a pig. You know, we're just changing the denominator to make the numerator look more acceptable. 91% compliance is still not in compliance. And you're taking a piece of property that you are going from institutional and neighboring on residential and going to the max possible density. And what we're saying is, and this is even more dense than that. So I would ask you to take that into consideration as well. The traffic study is very interesting to me because the one thing that's not going to change, it's kind of like, you know, the safety of the kids who walk to and from the middle school. And I believe Forest Hill School District, like many other districts, has at least at times considered changing the time for the middle school and the high school because every study says they should. When you say that your traffic study was between 7 and 8 a.m., most of the traffic for the middle school has cleared at that point because the middle school starts at like 7:10 or 7:15. Believe me, between 6:15 and 7, it is just a long line of cars going down that road. If the Nagel School, or if they would even shift that by half an hour, you would suddenly find that your traffic study would be completely different. And again, putting the safety of all the kids who walk to school at risk. And those are the kids that live on our street. Pine Terrace and Sacred Heart, our kids walk to school. And we're not looking for a bus ride for our kids. We don't want them to stand out there and wait for a bus. It's much healthier to just walk to school, but you have to be realistic. And as far as that traffic study goes, I got to tell you, I'm an accountant, and when I'm not sure of a number and I'm trying to guess, we tend to go more conservative as opposed to more optimistic. And so when I hear that there are 130 total units with at least one adult in each unit, and some percentage of that is going to have 2 working adults, so your range is 260 adults down to 130, I'm not really buying the 40 trips during busy time. That to me is kind of ludicrous. So I would ask that you be conservative as opposed to shooting for the most optimistic possible number when you decide how it's going to impact the safety of our children. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. The wording in the township plan, by the way, says very specifically that we are open to and want to encourage multifamily, multi-unit housing as long as it doesn't impact the value of the properties in that area. It's very specific. And so for those people who live in those 6 houses or whatever on each side, glad we have the buffer, but I'm sure they have some concerns.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Saw his hand first. Please come forward.
Hello, my name's Jeff Weber, and I live at 8215 Ash Grove. And I kind of have a simple question and I didn't see this in the presentation, is what is the pricing for these units? How much does it cost for a 1-bedroom and how much does it cost for a 2-bedroom? And is that consistent with the pricing you currently have in the Stonegate apartments?
We'll take the question, then we'll bring it back to the...
Is that how it works?
And the way it really works is they don't address the applicant directly, but we'll take that and we'll open it up again for commissioner questions.
Okay, thank you.
Sir?
I'm Steve Johns. I live at 8069 Sacred Heart Lane. If I'd have my druthers, I wish they could still be soccer fields and baseball fields, but I know that won't happen. And I must say this is much better than what we saw last year. I like the idea of using Stone Gate instead of a new entryway. I like the turn lanes they're putting in if they're approved. If they're not approved, it'll probably cause trouble with, I think there is a lot more traffic than their expert told you about. But the one thing that gets me is your southern accent on the Beachmont. It's got to be workable some way, but just to think you're going to put them down into a strip mall lot and everything's going to be fine, it's just crazy. Don't you study people the way they drive? If I'm a young professional going to work late, coming home, I'm 200 yards from my home, I want to get home first, I'm not going to be driving through that strip mall like I'm going there shopping. I'm going to be zipping through. If I come and the light, like you know, at Applebee's is backed up and you can only get about 6 cars there, I'm going to cut over through Ameristop and make a right, or I'm going to turn against traffic and make a left. The other exit that you said, well, you can only turn right, some idiot's going to go down here and turn left. So there's got to be a way to do it, but just not to just, okay, we got you this far to the strip mall, everything's going to work. It's crazy. I think at one time, wasn't there even a back way over to IHM, the church? Somebody will find that too. So just my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Pamela Van Sant. I live at 8023 Stonegate, so I am one of the single-family homeowners. First of all, I want to thank you for many, many changes that addressed nearly everything we brought up last year, so I'm really not in opposition, but I would just ask for some consideration of a few things. First of all, the traffic. I am one of these poor people that have to get up and sit on Stonegate and try to get out of there every morning. I leave anywhere from 6:15 to about 7:15. Depending on exactly when I hit it, I'm either stuck and the whole Nagel is jammed up both ways because of busing, buses picking up the elementary kids or the high school kids or the kids going down to Nagel. So it's very busy. If I happen to hit it at a bad time, I could sit there forever because most people do not get over in the right lane, or the people turning left don't leave enough room to turn right. So the striping is critical. If you added 10 more cars, 20 more cars, 50, whatever it is, all it takes is one car trying to turn left, and we are all stuck. So that being said, again, 40 people going to work every morning is fascinating to me. These people must be retired or independently wealthy. I don't really buy those numbers at all. But regardless, the issue is you can't turn both ways. So especially a left is nearly impossible because everyone's going to Nagel. So anyway, I would just request that the striping be part of the requirements for this. The other issue is I would be opposed to the gate because again, if I'm pulling down and I see that this is all backed up, there could be 10 cars and again, every car turning left, it's just nonstop. I want to be able to go out the other way myself. So I think it was suggested that you might want to actually open that up because then I think you would divide your traffic more evenly and then you'd have options when there's a jam one way or the other. So to me that would be a wiser move. The other consideration I have, and it's hard for me to really visualize what the distance is, but the entrance that's going to be right there by the pool, there are a ton of children around there all the time. I'm kind of wondering what you're going to do for safety of a whole nother driveway which could be fairly quickly accessed and people may be driving fairly fast and there's just a ton of people in the summer around that pool area. Now if you move the playground that may help, but even on a busy day when people are at the pool they kind of hang out outside of the pool and lots of people are out and around there. So that might be something you want to look at. I know you're going to put some tree line there a little bit, but you might want to consider fencing or something to separate that pool area, because I do think that's a safety issue, because as you said, there are a lot of children living in that part of Stonegate, and if it's going to be very different, you might have some young folks that are maybe not accustomed to driving around a lot of children. My other consideration is just really the same as already been voiced, and that is please leave as many trees as you can, because you know, just for the aesthetic value of the tree line, it's very, very helpful. And the noise and the light, you know, especially in the summer, again, our pool gets very loud, can stay open till 11 o'clock when there's a hot tub working. So I don't know if the same thing will occur over in the other area, but I could see a lot of noise and obviously lights coming from that area that would possibly disturb that line of houses. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take your traffic suggestion about the striping to, I think it's Tom Caruso, in the traffic advisory.
Well,
You good?
we use Hamilton County as our engineer because we are not traffic engineers as well.
Right.
So
We
Hamilton
take it
County
down.
engineer serves as our engineer in regards to traffic studies, and we would use the
Right.
county.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public discussion, and then I'll ask the commissioners to open up for commissioner discussion amongst ourselves here, and then...
We may need to have the applicant come back up as well.
Mr. Anderson, would you like to address any of the questions they rose? Brought up?
Sure.
Thanks, Paul.
Let's go back.
I think there was a slide there about rents. There you go.
So the demographics in general are just young professionals between the ages of 30 and 70. Can be a variety of empty nesters, renters by choice, young professionals. Median income about $55,000 or more. Rents will range from $975 to $1,500. And then the direct question that was asked about the existing rents at Stonegate, this is different. It is higher. It's brand new. But some of the things that I touched on about certain remodeling, updating, upgrading of existing Stonegate is to help essentially compete with what we propose to build. So it eventually will be a very healthy multi-phase structure in terms of different rents and being accessible to a wide range of people with a variety of incomes and, of course, people with children, which is the existing Stonegate. The new existing, we don't envision a lot of children. But, the traffic study, I think the one comment to only really say or reiterate is the scope of the traffic study and that work is provided by Hamilton County, not by us, and that is how Jack Flume performed his work. So all of the comments that have been made around traffic are duly noted on our end. The striping on the Stonegate Road as Township Road, or Stonegate Drive, we are not opposed to that whatsoever. So we'd be happy to look into that with you too, Paul. As for safety of kids, I don't know. Again, maybe this can be discussed when we talk about striping, but we could add maybe additional signage and things like that along Stonegate to advise of children crossing, children at play, what have you. We are fully open to ensuring that safety is fully observed and considered. Thank you. I think that was it.
I'll just say that we have the same interest, obviously, in terms of traffic. In other words, we have residents living there, and we want the traffic to work well. I wish I was an expert in that stuff, and therefore I could study it myself and report to you directly. But we're reliant on people who are experts at that, and so you know, I don't know what else, you know, with the comments of, well, it's hard to believe those numbers, et cetera. I guess, you know, if certainly, the county was fine with them, but if the county wanted to do another traffic, I guess they would have said if they wanted another traffic study, but we certainly wouldn't be opposed if they said that.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we will close the public discussion and open it up to the commissioners. Start again. Commissioner Reagan?
Yes.
Comment, questions, concerns?
Well, after having reviewed the proposal and hearing a lot of the discussion and questioning, I definitely think that if we approve this, that the traffic striping should be implemented on Stonegate. I think that would be a reasonable way to regulate traffic coming out in the morning. I'm not going to, I don't think it's necessarily wise to bog ourselves down in numbers, because real-life scenarios when it comes to traffic estimates can sometimes be over or under. I think a reasonable ballpark is the best that we'll be able to come up with before this goes in. And that's why I'm glad that we've had this traffic discussion tonight, so that we're making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted as much as we possibly can here right now. That being said, I also think that inviting $15 to $16 million of development in our township is a very good thing for keeping the economic vitality of our community moving forward. These are presumably people who will be using our stores, who will be attending our facilities, and there will be secondary effects in the community, even more than just the direct investment of the 15 to 16 million. And I think that when it comes to using land in a reasonable way, it seems like the developers here have been acting in good faith to modify the proposal from the first proposed development after hearing from residents at the first zoning commission meeting, and I think that's something that they should definitely be commended for. So based on their already demonstrated history of good faith, the significant amount of investment that this development would bring to Anderson Township, and the fact that in addition they will be using environmentally sustainable construction and maintenance methods, I think that this is a development that we should be welcoming to our township, to send a message that Anderson is open for business and that we want a wide range of people coming here to stay here and call Anderson home, so we can diversify our housing stock and continue moving our township forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. And one directed to Paul. The maintenance of the South Road out of there, is there an understanding that the developer would have full maintenance responsibilities over that? I guess that kind of goes to the question of these off-premise things. Who's going to upkeep that, or do we know at this point?
Where's the demarcation point?
There has been an agreement, a tentative agreement made by the township and the applicant, although I'm not sure if the maintenance, I have not been involved with that aspect of this.
Somebody's thinking about it, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's a very important point, Ben.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we could think about a condition or something. One of the residents mentioned the balance of the, I think Mr. Winters, the balance of the township land to the east, and that did flicker through my mind as we look at this development. Is there anything going on with the land to the east at this time, or is that just going to be held at this point, green space development?
There was a letter submitted by Steve Severs of the township that was part of this application, stating that pending the outcome of this, the township does have intentions of possibly doing something with that property. At that time, though, they hope to conduct public meetings to see what is best for the neighborhood, but what's also best for the township as a whole.
Getting a little ahead of things. And just my
So
quick...
I think, but to answer that question, I think it is anticipated that something will happen there at some point in time.
Okay.
However, there will be public meetings to discuss what may or may not
All right.
happen there.
And my quick math shows that this proposal's proposing 52 units less than last time. Last time I thought somebody said 182 units. Is that right? Okay. So I guess my comments on it are this. Actually, when you go look at that property and look around at everything that's surrounding it, it does seem like it was really made for a multifamily development of some sort, based on the surroundings, which are institutional, the township property, and existing residential. Also, I lived at Stonegate back in the 90s, and you know, I was asking the developer about upkeep of that. That is a big property, but I think generally it is kept up pretty well, and that's one of the things with multifamily is whether you get a good multifamily development or a bad multifamily development, it's really about the ownership and the management of this, and these owners have shown a commitment to Anderson Township. They've owned that for a long time, and they want to invest further. So I think that's an intangible but a positive about this development. The architecture, I'm not a fan of, but I think it would be unfair, at least from my seat, to ask them to go back and redesign it, because it sounds like they did that to come back this time. But I like the modern architecture myself, but that's just a personal preference, and I think they're trying to be responsive. But it was a really good point that the commission brought up about the hardy plank siding, because I think a really little thing like that will make these buildings much more attractive and more sustainable than maybe a lower quality vinyl siding. So that was really important. And let's see, I think the reason that the traffic count is so low, when I heard a little bit more discussion, is he just looked at 1 hour of time. So I think if you take 2 hours of time, you're going to see a really more figure that seems to be a little more consistent with the number of units and stuff. So I'm guessing that's why that number was relatively low. But something I heard was, it was interesting, even the opposition comments actually raised a lot of, I think, positive points about it. And one of them, I think, is this secondary access, that you're going to have this point where you can exit out of that associated with this new development. You can get out of Stonegate a different way. And, with Nagel, yeah, it backs up there, and that's a problem. So this could be a big benefit for the whole development, including the single family along there. That's about all the comments I have. I guess it seems like it's a decent fit there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yeah, I think for the proposed zone change, seems to be in compliance as far as listening to what was previously discussed with the zoning commission and voiced by the neighbors. I think the final development plan needs a lot more refinement as far as public safety, screening, landscaping, what fences are looking like to, truly buffer those sides. I don't know if we can defer that to that point in time, or if we want to address some of those today. But with that, that's all my comments.
Okay. Commissioner McBride? I see a lot of notes.
Lots of notes, you know me. I have, as some of the members of this commission know, been a very large proponent of including multifamily housing in Anderson Township. However, last time around, I will say to you, I did not feel that the Mayerson Group was listening to us or to the residents. Having said that, I feel tonight that the proposal that you have brought to us is representative of taking into account the concerns of the residents and the comments and questions and so forth that this commission raised to you. So I do appreciate that very much. I, like some of my colleagues, believe that this is an appropriate location for multifamily, and that we do need more opportunities for particularly new multifamily housing in Anderson Township. It simply doesn't exist. And for those of us that are getting older in age, something like this could be an alternative housing for both kids coming back from college and as well as empty nesters. I do think that if you are going to call this phase 3 of the development, and that we're going to allow the density as you're proposing it, and it's truly to be part of Stonegate, then those gates have to go away. And I understand why you were trying to differentiate this from the other parts, but maybe you can still do it with entranceways and landscaping and so forth. But I think, folks are using going around through SEM. I think it does something to distribute the trips at Stonegate and Nagel, and so I feel pretty strongly about that. When your final development plan comes in, I would personally be looking for upsized plant material, because we all know if you say 6.5 to 7, you're going to get 5.5 to 6. And so we're going to be looking for upsized plant material. We're going to be looking for buffering to the church, or I should say I'm going to be looking for buffering to the church, as well as additional buffering going in where existing plant material is coming out. We're expanding the detention on the west, along the west there. I'm also going to be looking for a tree survey that I mentioned with the conditions of those, as well as the species and the size, as well as location where this construction fencing is going to be going to back it out of the drip line of all of those existing trees that you're going to be maintaining. I think that a lot of the discussion about the traffic impact analysis, one of the things, having formerly been Mr. Flume's partner, I will tell you that those trip generation numbers were based on the ITE trip generation manual, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and I believe they're up to the 7th edition now. But it is 2 books about this size, and it has every land use category in there. And what Mr. Flume would have done was, as he indicated in his traffic study, he would have gone to the land use category that best described this type of land use, which he did, and then you factor in the number of units and so forth, which I'm sure that he has done. This does just capture either the AM or the PM peak hour, not the total number of trips that are going to go out of that. Having said that, I still don't agree with this 50-50 distribution, but I think that we can address that with no gates, and then I am going to be requiring that Stonegate be striped to allow for a left turn lane and a right turn lane. And quite frankly, Jim, I think that will help with your existing development as well as your new development. When the final development plan were to come in, we'd be looking for things like how are you going to fence off that existing pool area to make sure that folks are contained, children are contained in that area as opposed to coming out onto the access drive. I also would be open to a more modern design. I think that might be something that Anderson would welcome. Maybe not going back quite to as contemporary as you were, but I don't think we necessarily need to mimic what is there today. It is phase 3. It's not phase 1 rewind. So if, I don't want to ask you to go back, but if you feel that there are components from prior submissions that you would like to see incorporated architecturally, design-wise, I think that at least this person would be open to considering those on a final development plan. I do have a concern, as I mentioned, about those parking spaces backing out onto that access drive on the west side of Applebee's. I realize that is not your property. You don't control that, but I think that is something maybe we're having some discussion with that center owner. So I think, having said all of that, I would be supportive of the request.
All right, just a couple comments to close with, and then we'll make a decision or make a motion. As a personal standpoint, I'm sorry to see the Firehouse Fields go, because years ago I coached kids there, and I agree with the statement about the accounting. I used to be an accountant, and you can change denominators and numbers and make them fit your paradigm. And the density is an issue. We have other concerns and different things. But all in all, I do commend you. It's a far different plan than you came with in the past. You did listen to the community, and you addressed the commission's a lot of our issues. I am disappointed that we did not get a chance to review the traffic study, because that's very important to the quality of life for all of us. So, that said, we can either approve without condition, approve with condition, deny, or table it. So, at this time, I will open up to any commissioner wishing to offer any suggestions.
Well, I would be willing to put forth a motion to recommend approval to the trustees of this zone map amendment with a series of conditions, and would certainly welcome any addendums to that motion if I'm missing things that other commission members may feel are appropriate. So I would make a motion then that we recommend approval of zone change case 1-2018 Anderson for 7911 Stonegate Drive, and that would be excuse me, with all of the recommendations from staff. That would include items 1 and 2 as recommended from the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission, and recommendations 1, 2, and 3 from our staff, and then subject to the following additional conditions: that there would be 2 points of access as shown on the plans, and that these access points, the 2 points of access points, would not be gated. that there would be cross-access easement for both access and maintenance over the township property to the south of where the second access point would be located onto. That Phase 3, the property under consideration, be consolidated with the existing Stonegate development. The access drive that would be coming through the township property to the south would be curbed on both sides. That Stonegate be striped to allow for one lane in, one left turn lane out, and one right turn lane out. That the design to be reviewed as a part of the final development plan, landscape, the lighting, all be reviewed as a part of the final development plan. And I think that's all of my conditions.
Clarification, they will need to get in compliance with the density at every 3?
No, not until they consolidate their property, but the consolidation of the parcels is part of the requirement.
Okay.
And that will bring them into compliance.
Would you consider just modifying that a little bit? I liked all your conditions and the cross easement for maintenance and just changing that they are responsible for the maintenance to that south access drive. So their development will be using it primarily.
I would certainly be open to the amendment. I just don't know if we're truly going to make that a connection from Stonegate out. I don't know that other folks maybe might not use it. I don't know what kind of relationship they have with the township with regards to them owning the property.
Well, let's not add that. It's something to think about. It sounds like Mr. Severs is perhaps negotiating that, but it seems to me that would be reasonable, but maybe perhaps not a condition for us.
Yeah, I would just say cross-access and cross-maintenance of that drive and let them sort out if it's 90-10 or 100% to these gentlemen over there.
Okay.
The sim has access through there too.
Commissioner Reagan?
Yes, would you be able to amend your motion to add that the development shall have a minimal removal of trees and other existing vegetation? I'm mainly concerned about that green space to the left.
Yeah, and I think we'll be seeing that with the final development plan. So I welcome that and I agree with that, but I think that's a detail that we would see at the final development plan.
Great. Great. Attempt to read that out.
Well, go ahead.
All of the recommendations from staff in items 1 and 2 from Hamilton County, 2 points of access as shown and not gated, cross-access easement to the south for both, for maintenance and use.
Access.
Phase 3 to be consolidated with the existing Stonegate property. The access drive would be curved on both sides, along with Stonegate being striped, and then design to be reviewed as part of the final development plan along with landscape and lighting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, by Garb, please take roll.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes.
Mr. Elick?
Yes.
Mr. Reagan?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll close out that agenda item and move on to the next agenda item. We'll take a 30-second break to let everyone exit who is not interested in the Gold Star.
Mr. Chair, before we take that break, if we could, I need to recuse myself from the next case because the property owner is a client of mine.
That's fine. Please
So-
note that Commissioner McBride is recusing herself from Gold Star.
Yeah. Sure you have a conflict? Yeah. So we'll get so it sounds like we get a second crack at this at the final development plan, I guess?
I think the township just, I think the staff just approves the final development plan.
How are you? See you, Ann.
Feel free to move forward. All right. If this,
But they have to come back. Now we get to look at, all the other stuff. I hope they're hearing us, landscaping and all that.
at this time, we'd like to move forward with the next case. Thank you. This is a... Nobody cares? Oh, that's right. We do care. To give me my script. I need that. Where's the Paul? I need to read these. All the way.
You can kind of paraphrase.
Just read down to here. Right here. Okay. So this is a little bit different. This is a quasi judicial hearing to discuss the planned unit development for case 1-2018 PUD with a variance request for a freestanding sign. The property is located at 7716 Beachmont Avenue, Anderson Township, filed by Gold Star Chili Commissary. So because this is a quasi judicial, I need to read this and then I'll have you stand up and swear because it's sworn testimony. So upon bringing this, okay. First, I'll outline the procedures the commission will follow in hearing and deciding this matter. Under the zoning resolution, our decision is subject to appeal to the Board of Township Trustees and then to the Court of Common Pleas. As a result, we must employ different procedures from the cases that are typically presented to the zoning commission. Because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, the commission will only receive evidence as to whether the application meets or does not meet the standards and criteria in the zoning resolution. We do not want to hear opinions, just facts. As a result, all persons presenting testimony before the commission, whether for or against the applicant's position, may only do so after being sworn in and being subject to cross-examination. The staff will present a summary of the application. The applicant will then present its case. The board members may ask questions of the staff and anyone who speaks on behalf of the applicant. If an attorney presents the case for the applicant, the attorney is not sworn in and is not considered to be a witness. As a result, the attorney's statements are not covered as evidence. Evidence only comes in through the witnesses who testify before the commission after being sworn in. The burden is on the applicant to present evidence that the application satisfies the standards and criteria for approval. After the applicant presents its case through its witnesses, all persons in the audience supporting the application will be permitted to testify one at a time after being recognized by the chair. When all persons supporting the application are finished, those opposed to the application will then be permitted to testify after being recognized by the chair. If anyone in opposition is represented by an attorney, that party will go first, followed by any members of the audience. As stated previously, all persons wishing to testify whether for or against the application may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person from the audience must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes unless the commission member requests that they be given additional time. All testimony is directed to the commission only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the applicant or anyone else in the audience. The commission will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous testimony, they may do so only by following the testimony procedures and stating their support of previous testimony. Now, will all persons who may give testimony this evening please stand? Raise your right hand and swear to affirm. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. All right, at this time we'll go with the staff report.
Thank you. The applicant is Steve Schlagbaum with Gold Star on behalf of 7716 Beachmont LLC, who is the property owner. The location is at 7716 Beachmont Avenue, and the zoning there is EPUD, which is retail with a planned unit development overlay. The request is to develop a 2,700 square foot drive-through Gold Star Chili restaurant. In addition, a variance request for an existing freestanding sign and a variance request for the front yard setback of the building. The site is just shy of 0.7 acres. There's approximately 130 feet of frontage on Beachmont Avenue, and the site's flat. The prior use was a former KFC restaurant. This is the site in question. Sorry, I'm trying to get my laser pointer. There you go. So this is Beachmont Avenue here. This is the former KFC restaurant. Surrounding uses to the south, to the east, and to the west are all retail. There is this parcel here, a sliver of parcel that separates this property from single family to the north, but this parcel here is also zoned retail. This is an aerial of the site in question. There is an access drive to the property to the east that is on this property. However, it's being used by the property to the east. And then this is a storage building, again, that's affiliated with the property to the east. This is Frisch's restaurant. And then across the street, again, are retail uses. This is the topography map, again, showing that the site is flat. And this is the proposed development, again, using pretty much the existing layout of the parking area, however, bringing the parking into compliance on the east side of the site. The current parking is not conforming because the first space is closer than 30 feet from the right-of-way of the road. So they are bringing this portion of the parking lot into compliance. A drive-through restaurant with one-way maneuverability through the parking lot. They are proposing a new facade on the front of the building. The existing building is set back right at 30 feet, so by putting a new facade and trying to renovate the existing facility or the existing building without altering it structurally requires them to come toward Beachmont Avenue approximately 2 feet, a little less than 2 feet. So they are requesting a front yard setback of 28 feet, and I believe it was six, well, I've lost my, I had it memorized, but now after the first case, I forgot. So it's a little over 20, it's a little under 28 feet.
28.8.
Thank you, 28.8, yes. That would be the front yard, proposed front yard setback. There is, or was, an addition to the former KFC restaurant. So the applicant, which is highlighted here in this hatched area, so the applicant is proposing to demolish that portion of the structure and then reconstruct an area for the refrigeration and back of house operations. So there is a net increase in the overall square footage of the building itself, just slightly from the former KFC restaurant. A little bit of history on this. In addition, they are proposing an outdoor patio. This is in an area of the downtown Anderson plan, and currently the township is constructing the public infrastructure portion of that plan, which includes narrowing the lanes on Beachmont Avenue to allow for the expansion of sidewalks in the area. So the sidewalks are actually have already been constructed in the fall. The project is still ongoing and should be complete by summer. But on this property in particular, the sidewalk has been constructed. Landscaping, 2 trees have been installed by the township, and further landscaping will still be installed later on this spring. But this is all part of the downtown Anderson plan implementation. And the area, this neighborhood in particular, Beachmont, runs from Asbury to the new Kroger development at the corner of Wolf Angle and Beachmont. They are proposing a small outdoor seating area, connection of a sidewalk from the restaurant out to the new sidewalk that the township has constructed. In addition, with a little bit of history, the prior use that was approved for this and redevelopment was for Tim Hortons restaurant. Tim Hortons discontinued their lease on this property and is not moving forward. So we are treating this as a new PUD request because Tim Hortons was proposing to demo the entire building and start from scratch, whereas this development is renovating. They are doing partial demolition and partial addition, but we felt that the PUD that was approved for Tim Hortons was different and substantially different. It warranted a new PUD. So during the Tim Hortons request, they did request to reuse the existing freestanding sign, and a variance was granted by the zoning commission to allow them to do so. The reason why a variance was granted, the sign is too close to the right-of-way, it is not set back from the edge of pavement of Beachmont, and so a variance was granted. This is the landscape plan. Again, additional landscaping, in addition to what the township has already installed and will be installing, the applicant is proposing landscaping in front of the restaurant, some behind the restaurant, and then at the end caps of the parking areas. The interior landscaping requirements are being met, and then as far as the street frontage, the township is installing the majority of that. The lighting, this is the floor plan of the building itself. These are the proposed elevation drawings of the building. Again, a new facade. However, the door would not be facing Beachmont. The door would actually be facing the side parking area. This is a window area. And then both the east, the west elevations, and then the north elevation. This is the proposed sign using the existing freestanding sign. This identifies the new sidewalk that the township has recently installed. This will be the edge of pavement of the new lanes. They are currently shifted so that work can proceed on the south side of Beachmont Avenue. But this is the new sidewalk in the right location. And this is some of the new landscaping the township has started to install last fall. It will be finished this spring. This is looking east on Beachmont in the shell of the former sign. This is the drive-through area of the existing KFC, or the former KFC. The existing facade of the building looking toward the west, toward Frisch's. The property is being used as a staging area for a construction project on Beachmont. That's why there's so much stuff in the parking lot. These are other signs for newer developments in the downtown area. And you'll see in our staff report, staff is not supportive of reusing that freestanding sign for multiple reasons. Primarily, this is considered the downtown area, and the downtown plan, along with our consolidated Beachmont plan and design guidelines, encourage lower monument style signage in the downtown area specifically. Because what we're trying to create is a pedestrian-friendly environment, and we feel that these style of signs are more conducive to that type of environment versus a freestanding sign, which we feel is more oriented toward automobile-oriented area versus what we're trying to create as a downtown area. So these are examples of newer developments that have gone with a lower monument style sign. Main Source, this is Tri-Health, and then this is Valvoline. These are all newer developments within this particular block of Beachmont Avenue. There are many non-conforming freestanding signs in the area, but we chose to highlight the new signs. We feel that these signs also fit in with the new streetscape project. They fit underneath the trees where they are more visible. The lanes are more narrow than what you would normally find in a suburban strip area. And so we feel that these are just more visible, and they are more attractive and more fit in with our design guidelines. So we just wanted to show you those. As far as findings go, zoning compliance, the property is in zoning compliance except for the front yard setback as far as the freestanding sign. And then also the lighting plan is not compliant, but we understand from the applicant that I think there is an intention to bring that into compliance and not request a variance. The applicable plans, we talked about the our applicable plans for this area are the Anderson plan, the comprehensive plan. We feel that the reuse of this structure and redevelopment of the structure is consistent with these goals of the comprehensive plan. Our trails plan, they are tying into the sidewalk. The downtown Anderson plan and the Beachmont plans, we talked already a lot about the design of the building itself. One thing I didn't touch on with our Beachmont consolidated plans are the recommendations of cross-access, east-west parking lot connections in the back. So they agree with that, providing cross-access, and you'll see that on their site plan. They're providing it, however, the adjoining property owners have not agreed to it, but again, this is shown on their plan for future cross-access when or if the neighboring properties would like to join the properties and allow for it. So they are providing that, which is a recommendation of our Beachmont plan. I think we've already touched on the design guidelines. So our recommendation is approval for the reasons that you'll find in the staff report, items 1 through 9. Our recommended conditions, that the sign package be resubmitted to reflect a monument-style sign, that a future cross-access easement shall be recorded in favor of the properties to the east and to the west. Let me get to our... Number 3, a lighting plan shall be resubmitted to be in compliance with the minimum lighting requirements of the zoning resolution. Number 4, the exit-only drive located in an easement for the adjacent property to the east shall be removed if when that property is redeveloped. This was a carryover condition from Tim Hortons. Number 5, the dumpster enclosure shall be constructed of material to match the building. And I don't have a picture of the dumpster enclosure, but right now it's a chain link fence with screen slats in it. Staff was recommending approval of the front yard setback variance. We are recommending denial of the variance for a freestanding sign. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Start with Commissioner Goddard.
Paul, I just had, I guess, one question concerning signage. Scaling off the drawings, it looks like there's about 84 square feet of sign in the Gold Star and the Gold Star symbol, plus you have the graphics for the canopy and the graphics that are on the wall. How does that compare to what's allowed, knowing that there's 3 elevations with a minimum of about 84 square feet, 360?
So our calculations are different for freestanding signs versus wall signage. So the freestanding signage, properties are permitted a half a square feet per their street frontage. So this property had 130. So they're allowed 65 square feet for their freestanding sign. So that's one calculation. And then the wall signage is calculated based off of their facade, and we generally allow for the facade where their door is. So we would use the east facade, and it's base times height of the building. You're allowed 20%, and then it maxes out at 250 square feet. And you can split that allotted square footage on multiple sides. So that is how the calculation is determined.
And the wall area is the rectangle about the largest part of the sign, correct?
Correct, yes.
That's what I was thinking.
If it's, if they're single letters or, that track signage, yes, we draw a square around the sign and calculate it that direction.
Yeah, and then the only other question I had was about the dumpster enclosure, really being non-compliant because of the chain link fence. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
No questions?
Commissioner Reagan.
No questions, thank you.
I had a question about the existing exit to the east. That's under Gold Star or KFC owned that single lane that you get from the nail salon and
Correct. Yeah.
So it now has like a 8-inch curb. It's a single lane exit with like an 8-inch curb that separates the property.
Correct, yes.
So,
That is correct.
okay. So that would
It's
go
an
in.
exit only.
Right, but
right now.
I did not know that was not their property.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
If I don't know either.
yeah. And then I had a question about the cross easement. If memory serves me right, there's nothing once to, you go from Frisch's today through Capel's, through Valvoline.
You can get to Wolf Angle through parking lot connections.
Right. It's just unofficial.
Exactly. Well,
Okay.
and those property owners have agreed to that. The township worked with those property owners to restripe Frisch's parking lot to allow for that cross-access. Valvoline was required to provide that with their zoning.
When we approved it.
With their zone change, or their zoning review. Capels and Frisch's voluntarily participated in that. They have not voluntarily allowed for cross-access for this property, but they did voluntarily allow it for the other direction.
Okay. And the trees you talked about, would those be on the, is there anything right in front of the building, or are they on the?
The townships, they're already planted.
So I see the, go back one slide.
There are
Right there.
two. This is actually on the adjoining property.
That's on the Frisch's.
Yeah, that's on the Frisch's property. There are two in front of the building. I thought we had one straight in front of it, but we don't. But these are the two. There's one here, and there's one here and one here, so.
Would they serve as an obstruction to seeing a monument sign?
We feel that over time, the trees are going to grow up, and the sign will be below.
Okay. All right, any other questions for staff? Applicant, come forward. Just state your name, address, affiliation.
Steve Schlagbaum, Gold Star Chili, 650 Lunkin Park Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45226. I'm here with my coworker, Tom Lakazi. I made the application because that's my job at the office. The plans and everything, part of what we were looking at, the variance request for the pole sign, we were pursuing originally because Tim Hortons had been granted the variance of it. Looking at it now with the new landscaping and the trees, Paul and I had multiple conversations about the development. We agree with the fact that in 10, 15 years, that sign will be blocked, but we actually have no problem with switching to a monument sign. We have a sign, we didn't have at the time of the resubmittal, I didn't have a sign designed and approved by corporate to provide to you at the time. Right. But we had looked at it and decided we agree with the landscaping work and what have you. We are in agreement to a monument sign and abandoning the existing. Paul explained to me the fact that this one only being 6 feet back versus the required 10 was part of the reason why it was actually non-conforming. I didn't realize it was that big of an issue, and since Tim Hortons had done it, the rework on the streetscape and everything, that makes sense. And again, so we really don't have any problem with the monument portion of it, very honestly.
Okay.
The design on the building itself, what we're looking to try to do, and I'll let Tom speak to this because he's got more information and history with the company and the design aspect of it, but what we're trying to create with this building, we're keeping a good portion of it because it is block structure with structural steel bar joists, and it's actually very sound structure with the exception of the very front part that for whatever reason KFC rebuilt, and the very back, which is stick frame brick veneer that houses their coolers and dry storage, and the layout is not conducive to our space. Because it's not real quality construction, that's why we're actually looking to tear down the front and the rear and rebuild that structure to create our image, which is our corporate building. The other item that really we have no problem with is the existing dumpster enclosure. Agreed. The fence that's around there right now is in very poor condition. What we would propose to do would rebuild that structure with a masonry material that matches the foundation of our monument sign, actually. Same thing that we've done at our corporate store locations that we just built recently in Withamsville and Liberty Township.
Okay,
so,
great.
And again, I'll let Tom speak more on the history and the building image, the look itself.
Good evening. I'm Tom McCalsey.
One other thing, just I do have calculations for all the building signage, which I'm more than happy to provide to you. This sheet actually has for the pole sign now. What I did is I updated it, or I need to update it for the monument sign. I'll be glad to submit that to you so you can see how we ran the
When
numbers.
you know the parameters and the, yeah, so, yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Go ahead.
So Tom McCalsey, 650 Lunkin Park Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45226, Director of Development for Gold Star Chili. So the facility that you see here in front of you, we're right now in the middle of the rebranding process with FRCH. So this is our new Generation 5 prototype. So the facade finishes that we talked about, and the reason for this addition and the bump out and the variance in the front is because we are adding this new facade to all of our corporate and our existing franchise locations as well. And so you see the ACM material that we're using at the top of the building, which is a custom color to us, as well as the facade tower feature that's the kind of welcoming addition to the front of our buildings to kind of welcome our guests into the locations. And the way that we could get the best scale and visibility on this building was to just slightly encroach in that variance to the front. As Steve mentioned, we're definitely willing to switch over to a monument sign over the pylon sign. We just requested it be a 10-foot tall by 6-foot wide, which is within the 65 square footage that we would be allowed based on our frontage on the street. Also, with the dumpster enclosure, we have no problem modifying the structure. Obviously, it's in pretty bad shape. There was some requests to do some additional landscaping around it. We're hoping that the rebuilding of the dumpster enclosure out of a masonry structure would offset any kind of additional landscaping requirements around that enclosure. That's it.
Questions from the commission? Start with Commissioner Goddard.
It was stated monument sign would be accepted, but a 10-foot in height, which I think does not meet township requirements. Would you be willing to do a monument sign that meets the township requirements?
Yes, we would. When we first discussed it, in the zoning guidelines, it was still defined that a monument sign was up to 15-foot tall, but I know that the design guidelines redefine that maximum height. We will design a sign that fits within the parameters. Yes, we have no problem with that. What we were looking at was a style of sign, which we have a photograph of the Withamsville location. It would be similar to this in nature, but again, we will adapt it to fit what fits this location on Beachmont. No problem with that at all.
Great.
I also actually do have an updated site lighting photometric that I made 11 by 17 copies. If you want to see that tonight, I actually just received it today, and I thought, why not? Timing was very good. So, but it too, when Paul and I talked about it, was a matter of a condition. I have the information to resubmit for it.
I mean, I think if you meet the township requirements, staff can easily, approve that.
That's what he was saying. That's what, yeah.
So this would be 6 feet wide by 10 feet high, is that what you were proposing?
That's what the current is, yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it'd be 60 square feet total. Okay.
Yes, and again, just on the 130, and we're allowed up to 65 for that frontage. Again, the proportions of it, that sign didn't max out what we were allowed down at Withamsville, but there's a proportion things you got to make sure it looks right with the signage. We will do the same thing. We actually work with Dual Light, who is our sign manufacturer. They create the renderings, the proportions, and we can submit their design drawings. Again, they didn't have the available time to create a formal image for us to submit, but the direction is in that nature.
Okay, the commitment to be within to be in compliance is what we're really looking for.
Yes,
so.
it will be, yes.
The adjacent parcels, use of your property for exiting, you're okay with putting that condition on your parcel?
Well, the condition, if I understand it, is that basically that egress lane is vacated at some point, which just allows me more parking space, well, more expansion. Right now, there is a curb between there. The space is completely useless to us. It was just an existing condition when we leased the property. So yeah, I have no problem. We are not using that exit lane. I have no problem with that exit lane going away.
Since you're a leasee, making a commitment for the property owner, is the property owner okay with that condition?
It was my understanding from when Tim Hortons had made the application, that was also conditioned, and it was agreed to at that time. So yes.
All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And this is a question maybe directed more to Paul, which is, with their desire to have a monument sign, are we treating that request as being withdrawn, or is that something that still needs to be denied?
I think you can, I think as the applicant has withdrawn it, I think it's safe to say you're withdrawing your request for that.
I'm okay to withdraw it, but I don't have anything formal to resubmit showing the position and/or the design of itself. So if you're in acceptance of me resubmitting that or following up with that as part of a condition, that's fine with us.
I think he's withdrawing
We've
his
already
request for
started the
variance,
process, very
so
honestly.
I don't
just
think
don't
we
have
need
it
to
done.
take
From a
action on the
housekeeping standpoint,
variance.
if we just put it into our motion that they will have a monument signed in compliance,
Yes.
solves it.
I'd be fine with
Okay.
that.
Yep.
I do, I'm sorry. On the signage, did you have more signage questions?
No.
Okay, can I ask one more sign?
Yeah.
Just for clarity, so you had talked about the wall signage. Are you requesting variances for the wall signage, or is your square
No.
footage?
Per all of my calculations, including the images that we have on the drive-through lane, all of those signs, graphics, verbiage on our awnings, that's all included in the numbers. I'm actually only at around 200 square foot.
Okay.
We're allowed up to
I
250.
just wanted to make sure the
So,
zoning
yeah,
commission
no, we
didn't
don't
need
have
to
a
take action
requirement
on
for
the
the
wall
wall sign,
signage.
building signage itself.
Okay.
And then just one other question, I apologize, again, more directed to Paul, but your remarks reminded me. So in our downtown area, I know part of the goal is to push the buildings forward with no parking, which it looks like they don't have parking in front of this one, they just have a patio. But is 30 feet as close as you can get, or can you, I thought you could get closer, but 30 feet is the limit?
The plans recommend 10 to 15 feet, and so, but it's not written in the zoning resolution. They have to request a variance,
I see.
or it has to be through a zoning commission process. It's not automatic. The plans recommend it, but we've never written that in the zoning resolution as an overlay area or
understand.
anything.
Okay,
So,
that's it, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Reagan?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay. This time, no one else was sworn in, I believe, so we'll close the discussion. Commissioners, anything to discuss amongst ourselves?
No.
At this,
I can ask Paul about that.
at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion. Commissioner Reagan?
Yes, I move to approve case number 1-2018 PUD for Gold Star Chili at 7716 Beachmont Avenue, adopting all four of the staff recommendations for the conditions of granting, of approving this project, and also of approving the variance for the setback to be 28.2 feet versus 30 feet.
Could I add a couple?
Yes.
Could that monument sign be designed to meet the township requirements and approved by staff? And that the wall signage shall be designed to meet this township requirements to meet staff review and approval?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. I think the monument sign was number one on the staff recommendations, but I think yours clarifies it a little better.
And you just mentioned 4 conditions, but I'm seeing 5 here.
I'm sorry, I misread. 1 through 5 of the
1
staff
through 5.
recommendations.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other addendums? So we did a modification, can you read back the modified?
All of staff's conditions and approval of the variance for the setback. Monument sign to be designed to meet requirements and approved by staff, along with all wall signage.
I'll second the motion.
Please call, roll call.
Mr. Goffin?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Reagan?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Looks good.
thank you.
Now that it's after the fact, I do have one clarification for this, because I'm looking in the Anderson Township design guidelines for the freestanding signage. Design guidelines height, signage is encouraged to be erected at lower heights, maintaining clearance above landscaping and parking automobiles and below power lines and mature trees, but does not define a fixed number. Is there such a fixed number?
And not for monument style signs.
So-
no. There are recommendations, but not a fixed number.
And I think that we can make ours work without any problem, looking at some of the photographs of the examples that you had for the other signs. Is that something that basically, when the sign company submits for a zoning permit, will I find out then if it's denied? And what happens, do I have to get a variance if for some reason the sign design doesn't work? Or what are my guidelines if there's no defined height? That's my question.
So, I think,
Only because it was questioned when we
I
said
think-
10-foot high and 6-foot wide.
Correct. And-
Should it not be 10-foot high and 6-foot wide?
if you look at Valvoline sign,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
actually
That's what
10
I
feet.
was
It's
referring to,
probably
yeah,
10
was
feet
Valvoline's
tall.
had some height to it.
It's actually 10, if not higher than that, but it has a monument-style appearance. Same way with the Tri-Health sign, I think it's about 6 to 7 feet tall.
Okay.
If you think that's not appropriate, then that's something that needs to be,
I think, if it meets the guidelines that's set forth, I guess I never remember us approving a 10-foot high monument sign. All of them seem to be in the 7-foot sort of maximum sort of range. But again, I'll defer to, the zoning district requirements for monument signs.
Okay, so proactively, I will get design done by Dual Light, and I can submit those to you.
Yes.
Are you of the authority to basically say, yes, it'll work or it won't work?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, please work with staff.
Okay,
He'll get you covered.
We can make that work then.
All right.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's the
Exactly.
same thing
I
as
think
we were
it-
talking about. It still has to stay underneath the power lines. We still don't want to block the sign on the top portion of it that's going to be where the trees are maturing to. Completely understand that. But the only, again, defined number is in the zoning code, and that's 15 feet for what's a monument. I think then the solid base all the way down, but we're still running into the same problem. If you make
Right.
it 15 foot tall, you can't see it. And it also
I think-
blocks line of sight from...
So I think we just want to work together, because I think our goals are the same. We want to make sure your sign's visible, and I think our desire is mostly that it has a monument-style appearance, and sounds like that's what you're interested in as well. So we can work together on the design.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick announcement. Just remember that next month's meeting is a week earlier. So it's April the 16th instead of April the 23rd. If you can please mark your calendars for that. We've also moved May's up a week earlier because of Memorial Day. So the next 2 months, we're on the 3rd Thursday instead of the 4th Thursday. Monday, sorry. Yes, Monday.
This time I'll take
Seems like Thursday right now.
I'll take a motion for adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second, roll call.
Mr. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott? Yes. Mr. Reagan? Yes.